The prince was locked in a closet, and the maid whispered, "Stay quiet, they're after you." Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. Eleanor Hughes kept her eyes down the way the palace preferred, not because she was timid, because looking directly at the wrong person at the wrong hour could cost her a week's wages or her place entirely. She carried a folded cloth under one arm and a small tin of polish in the other. The corridor outside the East reception rooms was quiet, the sort of quiet that belonged to late duties and early rising. The lamps had been lowered. The portraits along the wall seemed to watch without interest. She had nearly reached the linen cupboard when a door somewhere behind her opened too fast. Not a servant's careful hinge, not a lady's gentle impatience. A rush of steps, hard soles, a breath that did not belong to a footman carrying coal. Eleanor stopped. Every instinct in her body told her to become part of the wall. A voice, low and urgent, cut through the dark. "Here, quickly." Another voice, sharper. "He cannot be seen." Then the sound that made Eleanor's skin tighten. A man being moved without any courtesy. Not struck, not thrown, but pressed, guided, controlled. The closet door beside her was yanked open. A figure was pushed inside with a single hard motion of the arm. The figure turned his head as if he might protest, then thought better of it. The door swung shut. The latch clicked. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. The men who had done it did not linger. Their steps hurried away, swallowed by the corridor as if the palace itself had agreed to forget. Eleanor stood frozen, cloth in hand. She could feel her pulse in her fingertips. She had seen noblemen arrive late from card rooms. She had seen ladies slip through passages to avoid awkward conversations. She had seen drunken squires stumble and laugh. But this was different. This was secrecy with teeth. She forced herself to move. One step, another. She told her mind it was none of her business. It could be a messenger hiding from a reprimand. A young lord dodging his chaperone. Something foolish that would be forgotten by dawn. Yet her feet brought her back to the closet door. She did not touch it. She only leaned closer, listening. At first there was nothing. Then a breath. Controlled. Close. A man's voice spoke from inside the dark, soft but steady. Eleanor Hughes. Her body jolted, as if the name had been pulled from her skin. She stepped back so quickly the cloth slipped and nearly fell. "How do you know my name?" she whispered, then immediately regretted it. No one was supposed to ask questions in this palace, especially not a maid, especially not at night. Inside the closet, the man released another slow breath. "I have read the household lists," he said, "and I am not at liberty to speak loudly." His tone was not commanding. It was clipped, strained, as if each word had to be chosen from a box of rules. Eleanor stared at the door as though the wood might turn transparent and show her the truth. "Who are you?" she asked, though she already knew. The pause was short. "Do you truly require me to answer?" Her throat went dry. She had seen him at a distance, always surrounded, always composed, always untouchable. You are His Highness," she said. "Yes." The single word made the corridor feel smaller. She heard him shift inside the closet, careful not to scrape the shelves. "I would not trouble you, Miss Hughes," he said, "but I require—" His voice faltered for the first time. Not from fear, exactly. From disbelief, perhaps, that he had arrived at a moment in life where he had to ask anything of a maid. Eleanor pressed her palm against her apron, trying to stop her hand from trembling. "Your Highness," she whispered, "you must not—" Footsteps, not the hurried ones from before. These were measured, unhurried. The steps of a person with time and authority. Eleanor's eyes widened. Inside the closet, the prince went silent at once, as if silence was a skill he had practiced. Eleanor leaned closer until her lips were near the crack by the latch. She did not dare touch it. She did not dare breathe too loudly. "Stay quiet," she whispered, each word barely a breath. "They're after you." From behind her, a man's voice spoke, polite and heavy. "Who is there?" Eleanor turned slowly. A tall figure stood at the far end of the corridor, a lamp held low. The light caught the brass buttons of his coat and the stiff line of his collar. Not a common footman, not a guard in livery, a household officer. One of the men who managed servants and schedules, as if the palace were a machine and people were parts. "Begging your pardon, sir," Eleanor said, dipping her head the right amount. Not too much to appear guilty, not too little to appear insolent. It is only me. He did not move closer yet. The lamp remained low, making his face difficult to read. At this hour? Yes, sir. The east reception rooms were used earlier. I was told to see to the corridor, the handles, the lamps. His gaze shifted past her, toward the closet. Eleanor felt her stomach tighten. What is that? The officer asked. A cupboard, sir. Linen and polish. He took one step forward, then another. Eleanor's mind scrambled. The palace had taught her the value of a small lie spoken quickly, with the right simplicity. You should not be loitering, he said. The corridor is not for servants at night unless sent. I was sent, she said at once. By whom? Eleanor's tongue nearly failed her. Names were dangerous. Choose the wrong one and it would be checked. Choose the right one and it would drag someone else into trouble. She chose the safest, the head housekeeper's authority. Mrs. Pritchard, sir, she said. She said the wax on the floor would dull by morning if I left it. The officer's eyes narrowed, not because the explanation was strange, but because it was ordinary. Ordinary things could be used to hide extraordinary ones. He came closer. Eleanor could smell the faint sharpness of lamp oil. He stopped 3 steps from her. Move aside, he said. Eleanor felt the prince behind the door like a living secret. Her mouth opened. No sound came for a beat. She forced it. Sir, she said softly, if there is a spill you will tread straight through it. I have just... Move aside, he repeated, and the politeness was thinner. Eleanor's heart hammered so loudly she was certain it could be heard. Then she saw it, the smallest mercy in the corridor, the tin of polish in her hand. She turned as if startled by her own clumsiness, and in doing so, she let the tin tilt. Not a great crash, not a dramatic mess, just enough. The lid popped loose. A dull smear of polish slithered onto the floor. Oh no, Eleanor breathed, letting true dismay color her voice. She dropped to her knees immediately, the way a maid did when she had made a mistake. The officer's boot stopped short precisely as she had hoped. He looked down, annoyed. Careless, he said. I am so sorry, sir, Eleanor said quickly, already wiping with the cloth, her hands moving fast. If you step there, it will mark your soles, and Mrs. Pritchard will... The officer's jaw tightened at the mention of the head housekeeper. Not fear, but a dislike of being made answerable to another official. He stepped back a fraction. He turned the lamp slightly away as though refusing to be inconvenienced by her mess. You will clean it properly, he said, and you will not be here when I return. Yes, sir. His gaze flicked once more to the closet door, then away. He did not reach for it. Not tonight. Not with polish underfoot and no cause he could name without making himself look suspicious. He walked on, his measured steps receding down the corridor. Eleanor kept wiping until the sound was far enough that it felt safe to breathe again. Only then did she rise. She leaned toward the closet, her voice a whisper that shook despite her efforts. He has gone. Inside, the prince spoke, controlled, but urgent. You lied. Yes, Eleanor whispered. Because if I did not, he would have opened the door. A soft sound from inside, almost like a bitter laugh without humor. And what do you imagine he would have done if he had opened it? Eleanor's throat tightened. She did not want to picture it. I do not know, Your Highness, she said. But I know why you were put in there. Silence. Then, very quietly. You know, I heard voices, Eleanor said. Men said you must not be seen. She heard the prince shift, careful. The closet was narrow. He had to stand close to the shelves. Open the door, he said. Eleanor hesitated. If you open it, he added, do so only a little. Her fingers found the latch. It was cold beneath her touch. She lifted it carefully and pulled the door open a hand's breadth. The sliver of darkness inside held the shape of a man. Tall, upright. His breath controlled, his shoulders squared even in confinement. Then the lamplight caught his face just enough. Eleanor swallowed. The prince's eyes met hers through that thin gap. They were steady, but she could see the strain in them, a kind of disbelief that this was happening. You have no business in this, he said quietly. I was only cleaning, Eleanor replied, and her voice sounded too small next to his. I mean, he said slower, I cannot draw you into danger. Eleanor nearly laughed at the word danger. It sounded grand, like a story. yet her knees still trembled. "Your Highness," she said, "forgive me, but I believe the danger is already in the corridor." His gaze sharpened. "What did you hear?" he asked. Eleanor glanced down the hall, listening. Nothing, only the low hush of the palace. "I heard a man say you cannot be seen," she said, "and another say you will not be safe, as if your safety is something they decide." The prince's lips pressed together. "Who were they?" he asked. Eleanor shook her head. "I could not tell. It was dim. Their voices were not those of ordinary footmen. They spoke like men who give orders." He breathed out slowly. "Then the matter is worse than I feared," he said. Eleanor stared at him. "Feared?" He did not answer immediately. His jaw tightened as if he were weighing what to tell a maid and what to keep locked behind his rank. At last he said, "There are persons within this household who have reason to wish me absent." Eleanor felt cold creep up her spine. "Absent," she repeated. "You mean away from the palace?" His gaze flicked past her shoulder as though he could see through walls. "I mean away from sight," he said, "away from counsel, away from anything that requires my voice." Eleanor's mind raced. In the palace, absence could be made to look like illness, travel, a retreat for health. It could be announced in a pleasant tone and obeyed without question. "Why would they want that?" Eleanor asked before she could stop herself. The prince's eyes returned to hers. There was no anger in them, only a harsh sort of honesty. "Because I have refused a decision," he said, "and because I have spoken to the wrong person in the wrong way." Eleanor's mouth went dry. "You spoke to someone," she whispered. "Yes. And now they hunt you?" Eleanor's voice shook at the last word. The prince did not correct her. That silence was an answer. Eleanor's fingers tightened around the edge of the door. "Then you cannot remain there," she said. "I am aware," he replied, a trace of dry humor in the words that did not reach his eyes. "Yet the corridor appears to disagree." Eleanor's head turned again. She listened, still quiet. She could leave. She could close the door and walk away and pretend she had never heard his voice. But her body did not move. The prince watched her as if he could not understand her delay. "You should go," he said. "It is not your burden." Eleanor swallowed hard. "I have been told all my life what is and is not my burden," she whispered. "This palace makes burdens out of very small things." His eyes narrowed not in suspicion, but in something like surprise. "Eleanor," he said, and hearing her name again from his lips made her cheeks flush with discomfort. "If they discover you helped me, they will remove you from this place." She gave a small, bitter exhale. "They can remove me for less than that," she said. "They can remove me for a wrong tone, a wrong glance, a wrong step. At least, this would be for something true." The prince held her gaze. For a moment his expression softened, not with pity, with a quiet recognition. "You are courageous," he said. Eleanor almost protested. Courage sounded like something done on battlefields or in books, not in a corridor with a tin of polish. But then she heard it again. A distant sound, not the household officer's slow steps this time. Quicker, more than one set. Eleanor's blood turned to ice. "They are coming back," she whispered. The prince's posture inside the closet became utterly still. Helena pushed the door nearly shut again, leaving only the smallest crack. "Do not speak," she said. "Not one sound." "I understand," he murmured, and then he was silent. Eleanor moved away from the closet as if she belonged there. She knelt again, cloth in hand, as though she were still cleaning the polish spill. She began to wipe a floor already clean. The steps grew nearer. Voices joined them, low and clipped. "Must be somewhere," one voice said. "Do not rouse the household," another replied. "Quietly." A third voice, dry and patient. "He cannot have passed the east stair. The night doors were locked." Eleanor kept wiping. The men entered the corridor, 3 of them. Their coats were better than servants, but not the velvet of nobles. Officials, men who were neither high nor low, and therefore could move in both worlds. One held a lamp, another held papers. The third carried himself with the calm of someone who rarely heard the word no. The calm one spoke first, stopping several steps away. "You," he said. Eleanor did not look up too quickly. She lifted her eyes as a maid should, deferential, unreadable. "Yes, sir?" "Have you seen anyone pass this corridor?" he asked. Eleanor's tongue stuck to her palate. She forced herself to answer simply, "No, sir." The man with the lamp stepped closer, scanning the walls, the doors, the shadows. His gaze fell on the closet. Eleanor's breath stalled. The calm man followed his gaze. "What is that?" he asked, in the same tone the household officer had used. Polite, testing. "A linen cupboard," Eleanor said. "Open it," the lamp man said. Eleanor's hands tightened around the cloth. Her mind screamed. Before she could move, the calm man raised a hand slightly. "Wait," he said. The lamp man paused, displeased. The calm man looked at Eleanor more closely. "You are Eleanor Hughes," he said. Eleanor's blood ran colder. "Yes, sir." "You serve in the East Wing," he said. "You are from Yorkshire, are you not?" Eleanor's mouth felt numb. "Yes, sir." The calm man nodded once, as if confirming a detail on a list. "What are you doing here at this hour?" he asked. Eleanor's mind grasped at her earlier lie. "Mrs. Pritchard sent me," Eleanor said, "to see to the corridor." The lamp man snorted softly. "Housekeeper's errands at midnight." "It was after the gathering," Eleanor said quickly. "The corridor was marked." The calm man's eyes dropped to the floor. He saw the faint smear where polish had been. He looked up again. "Marked," he repeated. Eleanor held her breath. The calm man stepped closer. Not too close. He did not want to appear threatening. He wanted her to cooperate. "Miss Hughes," he said, "there has been confusion in the household tonight." Eleanor's fingers tingled. The word confusion sounded gentle. The men's eyes did not. "Third gentleman is unaccounted for," he continued. Eleanor kept her face as blank as she could. "A gentleman?" she echoed as if puzzled. The lamp man's gaze slid again to the closet. Eleanor felt as though her lungs were shrinking. The calm man watched her carefully. "If you have seen anyone," he said, "you must speak. It will be better for you. Better." The palace's favorite word for obedience. Eleanor swallowed and made her voice steady. "I have seen no one, sir," she said. The calm man tilted his head. "Not even a gentleman in haste?" he asked. Eleanor shook her head. The lamp man took a step toward the closet. Eleanor's heart lurched. She moved without thinking. Not blocking him fully, but shifting her kneeling position so that she was slightly in the way, like a maid absorbed in her task. "Oh," she said, as if remembering. "If you mean the footman from the kitchens, he hurried past earlier. He said he was late with a tray." The lamp man stopped, frowning. "A tray?" Eleanor nodded, making her expression mildly annoyed, as if inconvenienced by careless men. "He nearly stepped in the polish," she said. "I had to clean it twice." The calm man's eyes narrowed. He did not believe her, not entirely. Yet he had no proof, only suspicion. "Which footman?" he asked. Eleanor lifted her shoulders slightly, helpless. "I do not know his name, sir. He was dark-haired. Not one of ours. Perhaps from the kitchens," the lamp man muttered under his breath, irritation rising. The calm man held up his hand again. "Enough," he said quietly. "We are not here to trouble maids." Eleanor kept wiping, her hands moving as though they belonged to someone else. The calm man took one more slow step forward. His voice lowered. "Miss Hughes," he said, "if you are concealing anything, you are placing yourself at risk." Eleanor's throat tightened. "I am only cleaning," she said. A beat of silence. Then the calm man nodded once, as if concluding. "Very well," he said. "We will continue elsewhere." The lamp man looked displeased, but he obeyed. He turned, letting the light swing away from the closet door. The third man, who had been silent, glanced at Eleanor as he passed. His eyes were flat, as if memorizing her face. Then the three men moved down the corridor, their steps fading into the distance. Eleanor stayed on her knees until the last sound was gone. Only when she could no longer hear even the faintest echo did she rise. She turned and hurried to the closet. She put her lips close again, careful. "They have gone," she whispered. From inside came the prince's controlled breath. "You delayed them," he murmured. Eleanor's hands trembled on the latch. "I do not know for how long," she said. She opened the door just enough to look at him again. In the narrow gap, she saw his expression had changed. Less disbelief now, more calculation. He was listening, thinking, building a map of the palace in his mind that did not rely on footmen and courtiers. Tell me exactly what they said, he whispered. Eleanor repeated the words as best she could. Confusion, unaccounted for, better for you. She described the calm man's manner, the lamp, the papers. The calm one knew my name, she added. The prince's eyes sharpened. Did he? Yes. He went still. That is not by chance, he said. Eleanor's stomach sank. They have lists, she whispered. Of course they do, he replied bitterly. Everything in this house is listed. Eleanor hesitated. Then she said, Your Highness, why did those men put you in the closet in the first place? The prince's gaze flicked away for a moment. They were not the ones who put me here, he said quietly. Eleanor's breath caught. Then who did? The prince's jaw tightened. Someone who spoke as if he served me, he said. Someone who smiled. Eleanor felt a chill. Her servant? She asked, horrified. No, he said. Not a servant like you, a man who stands near power and borrows it. Eleanor tried to keep her voice calm. An official, she guessed. The prince's eyes returned to hers. Yes, he said. And he was not alone. Eleanor's mind flashed to the head housekeeper, the officers, the quiet corridors where decisions were made without her ever knowing. You must leave this corridor, she whispered. They will return. They will open every door. The prince exhaled slowly. I cannot walk through the front halls, he said, not without drawing attention. Eleanor's thoughts raced. The palace was full of paths servants used, narrow passages behind tapestries, stairs that did not appear on the grand maps, storage rooms that connected wings. She had walked them all without anyone caring, because she was invisible. A strange steadiness entered her chest. I can take you through the service way, she whispered. The prince stared at her. You will not, he said at once. Eleanor's brow knit. Why not? Because you will be seen with me, he said, and that will be the end of you. Eleanor's lips parted, and for a moment she had no words. Then she said, Your Highness, with respect. I am seen only when someone wishes to blame me for something. The prince's expression shifted. A flicker of pain crossed it, quick and genuine. That should not be so, he said. It is so, Eleanor replied. A silence settled between them, thin and dangerous. Then the prince spoke, low and firm. If you lead me, you must understand this. I cannot protect you with empty promises. Eleanor let out a small breath that was almost a laugh. I have never had promises, she said. Empty or otherwise. His gaze held hers. Why are you doing this? He asked. Eleanor opened her mouth. The true reason sat in her chest like a stone. Because it was wrong. Because she could not bear to close the door on a person hunted like a criminal in his own home. Because someone had finally spoken her name, as if she were a human being. But she could not say all that, so she said the simplest truth. Because you are in there, she whispered. The prince blinked, as if the answer had struck him. Before he could speak again, something on the floor caught Eleanor's eye. A folded paper lay near the wall, half-shadowed. She had not seen it earlier. She bent and picked it up carefully. The paper was thick, official. There was wax on it, but not the royal crest. Her stomach tightened. The seal was a crest she did not recognize, but it looked close enough to nobility to be dangerous. A bird, perhaps, and a line beneath it. Something that belonged to a family with influence. Eleanor's fingers went cold. What is that? The prince asked, immediately alert. I think... Eleanor swallowed. I think one of them dropped it when they pushed you inside. The prince's eyes fixed on the paper. Do not open it, he said sharply. I was not going to, Eleanor whispered. He released a breath, regaining control. Hide it, he said, not in your pocket. Eleanor's eyes widened. Why not? Because if they search you, he said, your pocket is the first place they will feel entitled to touch. Eleanor flushed with anger and shame at the truth of it. Then where? She whispered. The prince's gaze flicked to the corridor's end. There is a loose panel beneath the lamp bracket, he said quietly, as if recalling a detail he had once noticed in passing. Near the third portrait. Eleanor stared at him. How do you know that? I have spent my life walking past walls without being allowed to touch them, he replied. One learns where the walls lie. Eleanor's breath caught at the odd kinship in the words. She moved quickly, keeping the paper hidden beneath her cloth as if it were part of her cleaning. She reached the third portrait, crouched, and felt along the wood trim. A panel shifted under her fingers. She slid the folded paper behind it and pressed the panel back into place. Her hands shook as she returned to the closet. The prince watched her, his eyes following every movement. "You should go now," he said. "You have already risked too much." Eleanor shook her head before she could think. "No," she whispered. His brows drew together. "Miss Hughes—" "Your Highness," she interrupted softly, and it startled her, because interrupting anyone in this palace was an offense, let alone him. "They will return. They knew my name. They looked at this door." He went very still. Eleanor's voice lowered further. "They will open it eventually," she said. "And if they open it while you are inside—" She could not finish. The palace did not need blades or fists to ruin a person. It needed only accusation and witnesses. The prince's eyes narrowed. "And if I leave the closet," he said, "how do you intend to conceal me?" Eleanor's mind ran through the palace like a map drawn in her bones. "The service passage behind the music room," she whispered. "It leads to the old storage corridor. No one uses it now, not the ones who wear good coats. Only servants." He stared at her. "You expect me to crawl through servant passages," he said, and the faintest edge of pride tried to rise. Eleanor met his gaze steadily. "I expect you to live," she whispered. The prince's pride faltered. For a moment he looked almost young. Not the heir carved out of duty, but a man cornered in a closet by people he had once trusted. He nodded once. "Very well," he said. Eleanor's fingers tightened on the latch. "Wait," the prince added. She paused. He looked at her through the crack. "If we do this," he said quietly, "you must tell me one thing." Eleanor swallowed. "What, Your Highness?" He hesitated, and then he asked the question that revealed more than any confession could. "Can you truly move through this house unseen?" he whispered. Eleanor's throat tightened. "Yes," she said, and the word held a lifetime of being ignored. The prince's gaze sharpened with something like respect. "Then you must teach me," he said. Eleanor nodded, breath unsteady. She opened the closet door wider, just enough for him to step out. He moved carefully, his boots silent on the carpet, his shoulders slightly hunched, because the closet had forced him to fold himself smaller than he ever should. For a heartbeat, he stood beside her in the corridor, close enough that Eleanor could see the tension in his jaw, the careful restraint in his hands, as if he did not know where to put them without drawing attention. "Stay near the wall," Eleanor whispered. "And do not look at anyone's face. Look at the floor as if you belong there." The prince's lips tightened. "That will be difficult," he murmured. Eleanor almost smiled, but fear crushed it. "It is the first lesson," she whispered. They took one step, then another. Eleanor's ears strained for sound. The corridor remained quiet. She began to think, for one foolish second, that perhaps they had time. Then, from the far end, came the softest click, a sound too precise to be accidental. A key turning in a lock. Eleanor froze. The prince's head lifted, his body instantly taut. The closet door behind them shuddered slightly, as though someone had touched it. Eleanor's eyes widened. The latch moved, not from her hand, but from the other side. The handle moved again, slowly, deliberately, while Eleanor was still standing right beside the closet. The handle moved again, slowly, deliberately, while Eleanor was still standing right beside the closet. Eleanor's body reacted before her mind found a plan. She stepped into the space as though she had always meant to be there, as though the closet were hers to tend. Her palm went flat against the door, not pushing it shut, not pulling it open, just resting there with the calm of a servant who had every right to touch a cupboard. The prince did not move. He did not breathe loudly. He became a shadow beside her, pressed close to the wall as she had instructed. The key turned again. A voice spoke from the other side of the door, low and satisfied. "There!" Eleanor's throat tightened. The sound was too near, too certain. The latch lifted from the outside. Eleanor moved her cloth up, as if wiping the brass. It was a small, foolish gesture, yet it made her look busy. It made her look like she belonged. And belonging in that palace was half of invisibility. The door shifted a fraction. Eleanor leaned in quickly and spoke in a soft tone, the tone she used when she corrected a younger maid. "Careful," she murmured, not loud enough to carry down the corridor, only loud enough to be heard by the person nearest the handle. "It sticks. Mrs. Pritchard told me not to force it." The door stopped moving. A pause. Then the same calm voice from earlier, closer now, as if the man had bent toward the crack. "Mrs. Pritchard told you that?" "Yes, sir," Eleanor said, keeping her head lowered as though she had not noticed that a stranger was at the other side of the door. "It swells when the lamps are lowered. The heat, if you pull it too fast, it splinters." Silence. Eleanor pictured the man's expression without seeing it. Authority disliked being corrected by servants, but authority also disliked looking foolish by forcing a cupboard in the middle of the night. The handle released. The key turned back. Eleanor held her breath until she heard the key withdraw. Footsteps retreated one pace, then two. Then the calm voice spoke again, a little farther away, addressed to someone else. "Not here. We have wasted enough time." Another voice answered, irritated. "He must be somewhere, and he will not be found by prying at cupboards like children," the calm man replied. "Go." The steps moved away down the corridor. Eleanor did not move until the sound faded. Only then did she turn her head slightly toward the prince. He was very close. Close enough that she could see the tightness at the corner of his mouth. "You spoke to him," he whispered. "I spoke to the door," Eleanor whispered back. His gaze flicked to hers. In the dim, his eyes looked darker than before. "You lied again," he said. "Yes," Eleanor replied, her voice thin. "But it worked." A faint sound came from him. Not quite a laugh, more like a breath of disbelief. Eleanor's heart hammered. "We have to go now." He glanced down the corridor, then back at her. "Lead," he said. Eleanor nodded once. She did not look at him again. If she looked, she might remember what he was, and fear would make her clumsy. She walked first, steady and purposeful, as if she was simply on an errand. The prince followed, half a step behind, near the wall. At the first turning, Eleanor paused and listened. Silence. She moved again, and he moved with her, his steps quiet, his posture contained. When they reached a narrow service door with a latch hidden behind a drape, Eleanor slipped her hand under the fabric and lifted it. The door opened with a soft complaint. Eleanor went in first. The passage beyond was tight and plain. It smelled of soap and old wood. It was not meant for noble feet. It was meant for those who made the palace run without being seen. The prince hesitated on the threshold. Eleanor glanced back and whispered, "If you hesitate, they will hear." His jaw clenched. He stepped inside. Eleanor closed the door as gently as she could. The click sounded too loud in her ears. They stood in the passage for a breath. Then Eleanor began to walk again. "This way," she whispered. The prince kept close. He did not complain. But Eleanor felt his discomfort as if it were a heat behind her. The heir to Ravenshire, pressed into a servant's corridor like a hidden parcel. After a few turns, Eleanor stopped at a small alcove where cleaning buckets were kept. "Wait," she said. He stopped at once. Eleanor listened. No steps, no voices. She looked up at him. "Do you know who that man is? The calm one?" The prince's eyes narrowed. "Not by name, but you have seen him?" "I have seen many," he said quietly. "Men who stand behind chairs and carry papers. Men who smile and never speak unless asked." Eleanor's fingers curled around the edge of her cloth. "He knew my name," she said again, as if saying it twice might make it less frightening. The prince's gaze sharpened. "Then you are no longer invisible to them." Eleanor swallowed. "I was never invisible, only ignored." The prince's expression tightened, and for a moment he looked as though he wanted to argue with the cruelty of that. But he did not. Perhaps he had finally understood it. Eleanor took a breath. "Where do I take you?" He hesitated, and Eleanor felt the weight of what he could not say. Then he whispered, "There is an old withdrawing room near the music room. It has not been used since my mother's time. The key is kept by—" He stopped. "By who?" Eleanor asked. His mouth hardened. "By those who now hunt me." Eleanor's mind turned quickly. "There is a storeroom behind the old linen press," she said. "It is for broken chairs and things no one wants. It is dusty, but it has a bolt." The prince looked at her. "You know it?" "I cleaned it once," Eleanor replied. "They forgot it existed." "Then it is perfect," he murmured. Eleanor led him on. They moved through the narrow passage until it opened into a servant's stair. Eleanor went first, her hand on the rail, taking the steps quickly but quietly. Halfway up, the prince spoke in a low voice behind her. Eleanor. She flinched at her name. Yes, Your Highness? Do you fear me? He asked. Eleanor nearly missed a step. No, she whispered, then corrected herself because truth was complicated. I fear the rules around you. He was silent for a moment. That is sensible, he said. At the landing, Eleanor paused. She lifted a small latch and opened another door, this one leading into a dim side corridor. As she stepped out, she heard laughter somewhere far off. A late party dispersing. A lady's voice, bright and careless. The palace still lived as if nothing was happening. Eleanor guided the prince past stacked chairs, past a curtained arch, toward a narrow door half hidden behind a tall screen. She reached for the handle. It was locked. Her stomach tightened. I thought, she whispered. The prince stepped closer. May I? Eleanor moved aside. He reached into his pocket slowly, cautiously, and produced a small key. Eleanor stared. You had it with you. I carry keys, he said, and the simplicity of it sounded like sadness. It is one of the ways one pretends to have control. He slid the key into the lock. It turned. The door opened into a cramped storeroom. There were old fabrics, a broken stool, a stack of yellowed ledgers. Eleanor slipped inside first and felt along the wall for the bolt. She found it and slid it into place, then she turned back. The prince stood just inside the doorway, his shoulders stiff, his eyes moving over the clutter, as if assessing whether such a place could truly keep him safe. Eleanor shut the door fully, leaving them in the dim. She whispered, Sit, not on the floor. There is a stool. He exhaled, slow, controlled. I can stand. You cannot stand for hours, Eleanor said, and surprised herself with the firmness. His gaze flicked to her. Then he did something that made Eleanor's throat tighten. He obeyed. He moved carefully, sat on the broken stool as if it were a throne he did not deserve, and rested his hands on his knees. Eleanor remained standing, listening. For a long moment there was only their breathing. Then the prince spoke, his voice low. They will search. Eleanor nodded. Yes. They will question servants, he said. Yes, Eleanor whispered again. And they will find you, he added. Eleanor's chest tightened. They already did. The prince's hands curled slightly. Tell me something, he said. When they put me in that closet, did you see the men clearly? Eleanor shook her head. No. Only shadows. Only coats. Did you recognize voices? No, Eleanor said. Then, hesitating, she added, One voice sounded educated. Not a servant, not a guard. The prince's mouth tightened. An official. Eleanor swallowed. And one spoke as if he were annoyed, not frightened. As if searching for you was an inconvenience. The prince nodded slowly, as if matching her words to faces in his mind. Eleanor shifted, suddenly aware of the paper she had hidden behind the lamp bracket. The note, she whispered. The one they dropped. Yes, he said. If we can retrieve it later, it may tell us who has reached so far. Eleanor's stomach turned. If I go back for it, they might see me. The prince's gaze held hers. Then we will not go back for it until we are certain. Eleanor's mouth opened, then closed. Certain. She had never been certain of anything in her life. She forced herself to ask what mattered. Your Highness, why tonight? She whispered. His eyes shifted away, then back. Because tomorrow, he said quietly, there is meant to be a private meeting, a council, a signing. Eleanor frowned. Signing? He nodded once. Papers presented as routine, papers that would place decisions into hands not mine. Eleanor's heart pounded. They would have you agree to it. They would have me absent, he corrected. They would have my absence become permanent. Eleanor's throat tightened. Is that possible? She whispered. In this world, he said softly, almost anything is possible, if it is done politely. Eleanor felt a wave of anger, sharp and unfamiliar. And you have no one to trust? She asked. The prince's expression hardened. If I had, I would not have been in a closet. Eleanor's breath caught at the plainness of it. She looked at the door. If you remain here, she whispered, they might search this room. They might, he agreed. Eleanor's mind raced. Then you must have a story, she said. Something that explains why you are not seen. Something they can repeat. The prince stared at her. A story, Yes, Eleanor said, her voice gaining steadiness. In this palace, people believe stories more easily than they believe truth, especially if the story is convenient. His gaze sharpened, as if recognizing a kind of intelligence the palace never credited to maids. "And what story would you propose?" he asked. Eleanor swallowed. She hated the words before she spoke them because they tasted like the palace's cruelty. "That you are unwell," she whispered. "That you retired early. That no one is permitted to disturb you." The prince's mouth tightened. "They will use that," he said. "They will use it to keep me unseen." Eleanor nodded. "Yes. But if it is your story, not theirs, it might buy time." He studied her for a moment. Then he spoke, low and precise. "Time for what?" Eleanor's hands trembled. "Time to understand what they plan. Time to find someone who can counter it." His gaze flicked to the door again, then back. "Who?" he asked. Eleanor hesitated. Names were dangerous. "I do not know," she admitted. "But there must be someone in this house who still respects you." The prince's eyes darkened. "Respect and loyalty are not the same." Eleanor pressed her lips together, then said, "Then someone outside the house. Someone who cannot be managed by whoever those men were." The prince's jaw tightened at the near slip. "You heard a name?" Eleanor shook her head quickly. "No, Your Highness. I only meant someone." He looked at her, and Eleanor felt the weight of his attention. In that small room she could not hide behind her work. He spoke again, quieter. "You should leave now," he said. "Before your absence is noted." Eleanor's stomach clenched. "And leave you here?" "Yes," he said. Eleanor shook her head. "They will search." He kept his voice calm. "If they search, I will hear them. I will move." "Move where?" Eleanor asked, and her voice rose a fraction before she forced it back down. "Into another cupboard, another storeroom." "Your Highness, you cannot keep folding yourself into corners." The prince's eyes flashed, and for a heartbeat, Eleanor thought she had offended him beyond repair. But then the flash softened into something else. Not anger, a kind of weary agreement. He breathed out. "What do you suggest, then?" Eleanor swallowed hard. "I suggest," she said, "that you remain here until dawn, when the palace is loud, when servants move everywhere. Then you can move as if you are merely another shadow among us." The prince's mouth tightened. "And you?" "I will return to my duties," Eleanor whispered. "If I am not seen, it will be noticed." His gaze sharpened again. "You would go back into the hallways after what happened?" Eleanor forced herself to nod. "Yes." "Why?" he asked again, and this time his voice carried a softer edge, as if he truly wanted to understand. Eleanor felt her cheeks warm with a feeling she did not want. "Because," she said quietly, "if I do not go back, they will come looking for me, and if they come looking for me, they will come here." The prince stared at her for a long moment. Then he said, "You think like a strategist." Eleanor almost laughed at the word, but it would have sounded like hysteria. "I think like someone who has been blamed for things she did not do," she whispered. The prince's eyes held hers. "I will not blame you," he said. The simple sentence struck Eleanor harder than she expected. She looked down quickly. "I must go, Your Highness." He nodded once, then hesitated. "Eleanor," he said. She looked up. "If you are questioned," he began. "I will say I was cleaning," she whispered. He looked as though he wanted to argue, but he stopped himself. Instead, he said, "Do not say my name." "I will not," Eleanor promised. He reached into his pocket again, slow and careful, and held out something small. A plain ring, not ornate but heavy with meaning. Eleanor stared. "I cannot take that." "It is not a gift," he said quietly. "It is proof. If you must convince someone that you speak truth, you show them this." Eleanor's breath caught. "If I show anyone that ring," she whispered, "they will know I have been near you." The prince's gaze did not waver. "Then do not show it unless you must," he said. Eleanor hesitated. Then she shook her head. "No. If I carry it, they can search me." He studied her, then nodded once as if conceding her point. "Very well," he said. "Then take this." He reached into another pocket and produced something far less dangerous, a small coin, worn at the edge, with a faint crest. Eleanor frowned. "That is a token," he said. "Not recognized by most, but recognized by one man in this house who once served my father. Eleanor took it reluctantly. The metal was cool against her palm. "Who?" she whispered. He hesitated, then said, "Captain Ashford." Eleanor's eyes widened slightly. "The guard captain?" "Yes," the prince said. "He is not a courtier. He may still be what he appears." Eleanor's heart pounded. "And if he is not?" The prince's mouth tightened. "Then you will know the truth quickly." Eleanor closed her fingers around the token. "I will try," she whispered. "Do not try," he replied. "Do only what you can without being destroyed." Eleanor swallowed. She moved to the door, unbolted it softly, and opened it a crack. The corridor beyond was empty. She slipped out and closed the door quietly behind her, leaving the prince in the dim storeroom with nothing but dust and duty for company. As Eleanor moved back into the servants' passages, she felt the palace around her like a living thing. It could swallow secrets. It could also spit them out. She kept her face blank as she descended the servants' stair and emerged into a lower hallway where other maids moved with tired eyes. One of them, a girl younger than Eleanor, paused. "Ellie," the girl whispered, startled. "Where have you been?" Mrs. Pritchard was asking. Eleanor forced her lips into a calm line. "Mrs. Pritchard always asks," Eleanor murmured. "Go back to your work." The girl frowned. "Did you hear about His Highness?" Eleanor's stomach lurched. She kept walking. "What about him?" "They said he is not well," the girl whispered eagerly, as if illness in a prince was a thrilling piece of gossip. "They said he took to his rooms early. No one is to disturb him." Eleanor's fingers tightened around her cloth, so the story had already begun. Not Eleanor's story. Theirs. She kept her voice steady. "Who said that?" The girl shrugged. "Mr. Lark said it. One of the officers. He told us to keep quiet in the East Wing." Eleanor nodded faintly. "Mr. Lark." Another piece of the machine. She moved on. In the grey hours before dawn, she returned to her usual route. She polished handles. She wiped tables. She made herself small. Yet everywhere she went, she felt eyes. Not constant, not obvious. Just enough to make her skin prickle. By the time the morning bell rang for the servants' hall, Eleanor's body felt like a tight knot. She took her place among the maids, hands folded, gaze lowered. Mrs. Pritchard entered. The head housekeeper did not need to raise her voice. Her presence did it for her. She was a woman whose power came from lists, keys, and the ability to ruin a reputation with a single phrase. The room fell silent. Mrs. Pritchard's gaze passed over the maids, as if counting them without moving her lips. It paused on Eleanor, just a fraction, then moved on. Mrs. Pritchard spoke. "The East reception rooms will not be used today. Extra quiet in the corridors near the prince's suite. No one is to linger." The word linger landed like a warning. A maid near Eleanor whispered, "What's wrong with him?" "Hush," another hissed back. Mrs. Pritchard continued, "Any servant found spreading rumor will be dismissed." Eleanor kept her eyes down. The word dismissed made her stomach tighten. After the meal, Eleanor rose with the others, preparing to return to work. A sharp voice called, "Eleanor Hughes." Eleanor froze. Mrs. Pritchard stood by the doorway, her hands clasped neatly. "Come," she said. Eleanor's mouth went dry. She moved forward, feeling the eyes of other servants on her back, a mixture of curiosity and pity. Mrs. Pritchard led her down a side corridor and into a small office that smelled of paper and soap. She closed the door. Eleanor stood straight, hands folded, eyes lowered. Mrs. Pritchard did not sit. She remained standing, as if she did not intend the conversation to last long. "You were in the East Corridor late last night," Mrs. Pritchard said. It was not a question. Eleanor's pulse hammered. "Yes, ma'am," Eleanor said. "Why?" Mrs. Pritchard asked. Eleanor forced herself to answer smoothly. "Because you sent me, ma'am, to see to the corridor after the gathering." Mrs. Pritchard's eyes narrowed slightly. "Did I?" Eleanor's stomach tightened. Mrs. Pritchard stepped toward a small ledger on the desk and touched it with one finger. "I keep my instructions," she said. "Written when necessary, and when not written, remembered." Eleanor swallowed. "I remember you told me," Eleanor said carefully. Mrs. Pritchard studied her, and Eleanor felt as though the woman could see right through her apron to the truth beneath. "Were you alone?" Mrs. Pritchard asked. Eleanor's heart thudded. "Yes, ma'am," she said. Mrs. Pritchard's voice remained calm. "You did not speak to anyone?" Eleanor kept her expression blank. "No, ma'am." Mrs. Pritchard's gaze did not move away. "Eleanor," she said, and hearing her name in that room was different from hearing it in the dark from the prince. It sounded like a weight. "Yes, ma'am?" "You have worked here long enough to know what the palace requires," Mrs. Pritchard said. "It requires obedience, it requires discretion, and it requires that servants do not insert themselves into matters above their station." Eleanor's fingers pressed together. "Yes, ma'am," she whispered. "Mrs. Pritchard stepped back as if deciding something. "Last night," she said, "there was confusion." Eleanor's chest tightened at the familiar word. Mrs. Pritchard continued. "Officers walked the corridor. Men asked questions." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Yes, ma'am. One officer spoke to me." Mrs. Pritchard's brows lifted slightly. "And what did you say?" Eleanor chose each word like stepping stones. "I said I was cleaning," Eleanor replied, "and that I had seen no one." Mrs. Pritchard's eyes narrowed. "Did you see no one?" Eleanor's pulse roared in her ears. She forced her voice to remain steady. "I saw no one, ma'am." Mrs. Pritchard held her gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded once, as if accepting the answer, or as if deciding to keep watching. "You will return to your duties," she said, "and you will remain in your proper areas." "Yes, ma'am." Eleanor took a careful breath, thinking it might be over, but Mrs. Pritchard added, "If you are approached again by any officer, you will come to me at once." Eleanor's chest tightened. "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Pritchard opened the door. Eleanor stepped out, her legs unsteady. As she walked away, she heard Mrs. Pritchard's voice behind her, softer, almost thoughtful. "And Eleanor?" Eleanor stopped. She turned slowly. Mrs. Pritchard's gaze was cool. "Do not mistake silence for safety." Eleanor nodded, unable to speak. She left. The palace above continued as if it were an ordinary morning. Trays moved, curtains were adjusted. Guests were greeted with polite smiles in far rooms. But everything Eleanor heard carried a second meaning now. A footman murmured to another, "He took to his bed early." A maid whispered, "No one is to go near his suite." An officer said to a messenger, "Take that to the private secretary, not to the prince." Not to the prince. Eleanor felt the words like a pin. At midday, she was sent to clean near a small antechamber that connected to an administrative corridor. It was not her usual place. That alone made her uneasy. As she wiped a small table, she heard voices from behind a half-closed door. She recognized one of them at once. The calm man's voice, the one that had spoken to her through the closet door. "The household has accepted the story," the man said. Another voice replied, smooth, impatient. "Of course they have. They always accept what is spoken with authority." "And the prince?" a third voice asked. There was a brief pause. Then the calm voice said, "He has not been seen. That is enough for now." Eleanor's hand froze on the cloth. Another voice, sharper, said, "When does the relocation take place?" "Relocation." Eleanor's stomach turned. The calm voice answered, "It will be framed as a retreat for health. The papers will be prepared. He will sign, or it will be arranged that his consent is presumed." Eleanor's breath caught. A low chuckle came from someone inside the room. Not cruel exactly, just amused at how easily a life could be managed. Eleanor forced herself to keep wiping, as if she had heard nothing. The door creaked slightly, and she nearly dropped the cloth. She moved away at once, going down the corridor with the obedient speed of a servant who does not wish to be noticed. Her mind raced as she returned to the servants' passage, heart pounding. They meant to move him, not merely to hide him for a day, to remove him properly with forms and signatures, with polite phrases that would make it seem reasonable. Eleanor thought of the prince in the storeroom, alone, waiting. She needed to get to him, but she could not simply run to the old linen press. That would draw attention, and attention was a net. She waited until late afternoon when the palace grew loud with the gentle chaos of preparations. Then she took a tray with folded napkins and carried it toward the service corridors. No one stopped her. No one cared. A maid with a tray was a moving shadow. As she turned the last corner, she heard steps behind her. Eleanor's stomach tightened. She did not turn. She kept walking steady. The steps followed. A voice spoke quietly near her shoulder. "Miss Hughes." Eleanor's heart lurched. She stopped and turned. An under-steward stood there, not Mrs. Pritchard's rank, but close enough to make trouble. He held a small paper in his hand. "Yes, sir," Eleanor said. "You are to report to Mrs. Pritchard this evening," he said. "For clarification." Clarification. Eleanor's mouth went dry. "Yes, sir," she said, taking the paper with careful fingers. The under-steward's gaze lingered on her face. "Do not be late." "No, sir." He walked away. Eleanor stood for a moment, the paper trembling slightly in her hands. Evening. Mrs. Pritchard. Clarification. Someone was tightening the net again. Eleanor forced herself to move slowly, calmly. She continued her route, reached the old linen press corridor, and slipped into the hidden storeroom as silently as she could. The prince rose the moment she entered. "Eleanor," he whispered. She shut the door and slid the bolt, then turned to him. "They have a story," she whispered quickly. "That you are unwell, that you retired, that no one is to disturb you." His jaw tightened. "As expected. They are planning a relocation," Eleanor added, the word tasting foul. "They spoke of it as a retreat for health." The prince's eyes narrowed. "Who spoke?" "I did not see them," Eleanor said, "but I heard them. The calm man was there. He said the papers will be prepared." The prince went very still. "And they intend I will sign?" Eleanor nodded, her throat tight. "Or they will say your consent is presumed." His hands clenched, then released. He drew in a careful breath. "This is not merely about hiding me," he said softly. "It is about removing my authority without noise." Eleanor's chest tightened. "Then you must be seen." His gaze snapped to hers. "No." "Yes," Eleanor insisted, and surprised herself again. "If you are never seen, their story becomes truth." His expression hardened. "If I am seen, they will seize control by announcing I am unfit." Eleanor swallowed. Then you must choose who sees you." The prince stared at her for a moment, then spoke quietly. "You heard them say my consent may be presumed," he said. "That requires a witness." Eleanor's stomach turned. "A witness who will lie." "Yes," he said. Eleanor's fingers tightened around the edge of her tray. "I was given this," she whispered, remembering the paper in her pocket. She pulled it out and held it up. The prince read the word at the top, his eyes narrowing. "Clarification," he murmured. "They are calling you in." Eleanor's voice shook. "Yes." His gaze lifted to her face. "They intend to frighten you into cooperation." Eleanor swallowed hard. "They will dismiss me." The prince's mouth tightened. "Dismissal is the least of it." Eleanor flinched, but she did not look away. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You must not go alone." Eleanor stared. "How can I go with anyone? If I bring a friend, they will separate us." The prince's jaw tightened. "Then you must go prepared." Eleanor's fingers closed around the small token in her pocket. "Captain Ashford," she whispered. The prince's gaze sharpened. "Yes." "I can try to reach him," Eleanor said, voice thin. "But if he is loyal to the same people—" "Then do not reveal everything," the prince said. "Show the token, ask him for a private word, nothing more." Eleanor nodded, though her stomach churned. "And Eleanor," the prince added, his voice lower, steadier. She looked up. "If they press you," he said, "do not sacrifice yourself out of pride. Do not become a martyr in a palace that would forget your name by morning." Eleanor's throat tightened. "And what am I to do then?" His gaze held hers. "Survive. So you can help me survive." The words settled between them like a vow neither of them dared to name. Eleanor forced herself to breathe. "I will go," she whispered, "and I will be careful." The prince nodded once. Eleanor unbolted the door, paused to listen, then slipped out. She moved through the servants' corridors, carrying her tray as if nothing in the world had changed. At a turn near the guard stair, she saw Captain Ashford. He stood speaking with a younger guard, giving instructions with a quiet authority. He was broad-shouldered, his expression controlled, his gaze sharp, a man who noticed details. Eleanor's heart pounded. She approached slowly, head lowered, as if she were simply passing by. When she was near enough, she let the tray tilt slightly, just enough to make one napkin slip. "Oh," she murmured, bending quickly to pick it up. Captain Ashford's gaze flicked to her. "Careful," he said, not unkindly. Eleanor lifted her eyes just enough to meet his for a breath. Then, in the smallest movement, she let the token slide into her palm, half concealed by the napkin. Captain Ashford's gaze sharpened at once. His mouth did not change, but his eyes did. He spoke to the younger guard without looking away from Eleanor. "Go on," he said. "Check the west landing." The younger guard nodded and left. Captain Ashford stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Where did you get that?" he asked. Eleanor's throat tightened. "A person told me you would recognize it, sir." Captain Ashford's gaze was steady. "What person?" Eleanor swallowed. "I cannot say here." Captain Ashford's jaw tightened. "You should not be showing that in a corridor." "I know," Eleanor whispered, "but I was told to seek you for a private word." He studied her face. "Why you?" he asked. Eleanor's chest tightened. "Because I was in the wrong place at the wrong time." Captain Ashford's eyes narrowed. "That is not an answer." Eleanor's fingers trembled around the napkin. "Sir, I am to report to Mrs. Pritchard this evening, for clarification." Captain Ashford's expression shifted slightly. A faint hardening. "Clarification," he repeated. Eleanor nodded. Captain Ashford looked down the corridor, then back at her. "Go," he said. "Do what she tells you. Say as little as possible." Eleanor's stomach sank. "Sir." He cut her off, still in a low voice. "If you speak too freely, you will be trapped. If you stay calm, you may leave with your name intact." Eleanor's throat tightened. "And the token." Captain Ashford's gaze flicked to it, then to her face. "I will take it," he said. Eleanor hesitated. "I was told to keep it unless I must." "You have used it," Captain Ashford replied. "Now give it to me before someone notices." Eleanor's fingers felt numb. She placed it in his palm, hidden beneath the napkin. He closed his hand around it. He leaned in slightly, his voice even quieter. "Listen to me," he said. "There are eyes on corridors you think are empty. If you are involved in something, the safest way to survive is to appear uninvolved." Eleanor's chest tightened. "Then why would I ever be sent to you?" Captain Ashford's eyes held hers. "Because someone believes I am still what I appear." Eleanor swallowed hard. "Are you?" Captain Ashford's mouth tightened. "Go to Mrs. Pritchard." Eleanor stood frozen for a heartbeat. He added softer, "When you leave her office, do not return to your usual route. Go to the scullery first, then to the back stair. Change your pattern." Eleanor nodded slowly, heart pounding. "Yes, sir." Captain Ashford stepped back as if their conversation had never happened. Eleanor lifted her tray and walked away, her legs unsteady. As evening approached, the palace grew more polished, more composed. Lamps were lit, doors were closed gently, voices became quieter, as if everyone had agreed to behave. Eleanor did not feel calm. She felt watched. When the hour came, she went to Mrs. Pritchard's office. She knocked. "Come," Mrs. Pritchard called. Eleanor entered, hands folded, head lowered. Mrs. Pritchard sat at her desk, papers neatly stacked. A single candle burned beside her. The flame did not flicker. Mrs. Pritchard did not invite Eleanor to sit. She gestured to the floor in front of the desk. Eleanor remained standing. Mrs. Pritchard's voice was polite. "You were approached today by an officer." Eleanor's stomach tightened. "Yes, ma'am." "What did he ask?" Mrs. Pritchard said. "He asked me to report to you," Eleanor replied. Mrs. Pritchard's eyes remained steady. "Before that." Eleanor's pulse quickened. "He said nothing else, ma'am." Mrs. Pritchard studied her for a long moment. Then she said, "This house runs on loyalty." Eleanor's fingers pressed together. "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Pritchard leaned back slightly. "There are times," she said, "when loyalty is rewarded and times when it is tested." Eleanor kept her face blank. Mrs. Pritchard continued, "Tell me, Eleanor, have you heard any talk among servants about the prince's condition?" Eleanor's throat tightened. She chose her words carefully. "I have heard the usual," Eleanor said, "that he is unwell and wishes not to be disturbed." Mrs. Pritchard nodded slightly. "And do you believe it?" Eleanor's mouth went dry. "Yes, ma'am," she said, because a maid did not say no to that question. Mrs. Pritchard's gaze narrowed. "You answer too quickly." Eleanor's heart lurched. "Mrs." Pritchard reached for a paper on her desk. "Eleanor," she said softly, "I do not enjoy dismissing girls. It creates disorder." Eleanor's chest tightened. "But I do enjoy order," Mrs. Pritchard added. Eleanor's throat felt tight enough to choke. Mrs. Pritchard set the paper down and folded her hands. "Last night," she said, "you were in a corridor where men searched. Today, you were near a room where men spoke. Tonight, you are here." Eleanor forced herself to remain still. Mrs. Pritchard's voice stayed calm. "That is a pattern." Eleanor's lips parted. "Ma'am, I only—" Mrs. Pritchard held up a hand, silencing her. "I will ask once," Mrs. Pritchard said. "Did you see anyone last night whom you have not named?" Eleanor's heart pounded so hard she felt lightheaded. She held to the lie that had kept her alive. "No, ma'am," she whispered. Mrs. Pritchard watched her. Then, slowly, the head housekeeper rose from her chair. She walked to the small cabinet in the corner of the office. She opened it and took out a single envelope. It was sealed. Mrs. Pritchard returned to the desk and held the envelope between two fingers, as if it weighed nothing. Eleanor's breath caught. Mrs. Pritchard did not hand it to her. She simply looked at Eleanor with a cool patience. "It is remarkable," Mrs. Pritchard said, "how quickly a household can decide what it thinks it knows." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Ma'am?" Mrs. Pritchard turned the envelope slightly, so the light fell across the name written on it. Eleanor Hughes. Eleanor turned, and Mrs. Pritchard stood there, holding a sealed envelope with Eleanor Hughes written on it. Eleanor turned, and Mrs. Pritchard stood there, holding a sealed envelope with Eleanor Hughes written on it. Eleanor's mouth went dry. "Ma'am, what is that?" Mrs. Pritchard did not smile. "A letter." "I see that," Eleanor said before she could stop herself. Then she lowered her gaze at once. "Forgive me, ma'am." Mrs. Pritchard's eyes stayed cool. "You are usually more careful." Eleanor's fingers pressed together until her knuckles ached. "Who is it from?" Mrs. Pritchard tilted the envelope slightly, as if considering whether Eleanor deserved to know. "It was delivered with great importance and great discretion." Eleanor swallowed. "Am I permitted to read it?" "You are permitted to answer questions truthfully," Mrs. Pritchard replied. "Whether you read it depends on whether you wish to understand how your name is being used." Eleanor's heart thudded painfully. "My name is being used?" Mrs. Pritchard set the envelope on the desk, tapped it once, and then slid it across the polished wood toward Eleanor. "Take it," she said. "Open it here." Eleanor hesitated. The seal was unremarkable. No crest, no grand wax. That, somehow, made it worse. She broke the seal with a careful thumb. Inside was a single sheet, crisp and formal. Her eyes skimmed the first line, and a cold heaviness spread through her chest. A request. No, a summons. Not from Mrs. Pritchard, from the private administrative office, signed by a name that had begun to haunt her thoughts since the afternoon whispers. Sir Alister Crowe. Eleanor's fingers trembled as she held the paper. Mrs. Pritchard watched her. "Read it aloud." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Ma'am," Mrs. Pritchard's voice did not lift. "Read it." Eleanor forced herself to obey. "I, Eleanor Hughes, am requested to attend the administrative office at 9 o'clock this evening for a statement regarding matters of household security." Her voice faltered on the last words. Mrs. Pritchard nodded, as if she had expected nothing else. "Household security." Eleanor looked down at the signature again. "Sir Alister Crowe," she whispered. Mrs. Pritchard's gaze sharpened. "So you have heard the name?" Eleanor felt heat rise in her face. Only in passing, ma'am." "In passing," Mrs. Pritchard repeated, and the phrase sounded like an accusation. Eleanor clenched her hands. "Ma'am, I am only a maid." Mrs. Pritchard leaned forward slightly. "In this palace, being only a maid means you are near every door and present at every moment. It means you hear what others believe is beneath them." Eleanor swallowed. "I do not seek to hear anything." "No servant seeks it," Mrs. Pritchard said. "It finds them." Eleanor held the paper like it might burn her. "Will you go?" Mrs. Pritchard asked. Eleanor's voice came out thin. "Yes, ma'am, I must." Mrs. Pritchard's eyes remained fixed on her. "And what will you say?" "The truth," Eleanor whispered, before she could stop herself. Mrs. Pritchard's brows lifted slightly. The truth can be arranged into many shapes. Eleanor's stomach tightened. Ma'am, is this about the prince? Mrs. Pritchard's gaze went very still. Then she said, careful and cold, Do not speak His Highness's name in my office. Eleanor's chest tightened. Forgive me. Mrs. Pritchard sat back. You will go to Sir Alistair, you will answer what is asked, and you will remember what I told you. Eleanor's hands shook. Silence is not safety. Mrs. Pritchard nodded once. Good, you listened. Eleanor stared at the letter. Ma'am, if I go and I say something wrong, you will be dismissed, Mrs. Pritchard said simply. And not only dismissed, marked. Eleanor's throat tightened. And if I say something right, Mrs. Pritchard's eyes narrowed. That depends on what Sir Alistair believes is right. Eleanor felt a wave of dizziness. Why is he asking me? Mrs. Pritchard's voice softened by a fraction, not into kindness, but into grim honesty. Because you were near something you were not meant to be near, and now they wish to make you either harmless or useful. Eleanor swallowed hard. Ma'am, I have done nothing. Mrs. Pritchard's gaze stayed on her. That will not matter if they decide you have. Eleanor's hands tightened around the letter until the paper creased. Mrs. Pritchard rose. Go, and Eleanor looked up quickly. Mrs. Pritchard's expression did not change, but her voice dropped slightly. If you value your place, do not attempt to become brave in a palace that punishes bravery in servants. Eleanor's breath caught. Yes, ma'am, she whispered. She left the office with the letter pressed to her chest like a weight. In the corridor outside, the palace seemed calm. Lamps glowed, footsteps were orderly. A lady's laugh drifted from somewhere distant, light and careless. Eleanor's body felt as though it were made of tight strings. She forced herself to walk normally. No running, no looking over her shoulder. Captain Ashford's warning returned to her. Change your pattern. Eleanor went to the scullery first. She pretended to look for a cloth. She washed her hands too long. She spoke to no one. Then she went to the back stair. Only when she was sure she was not being followed did she slip toward the old linen press corridor. Her heart pounded as she unbolted the storeroom door and slipped inside. The prince stood at once. He had been waiting on his feet, restless. His gaze went immediately to her face. Something has happened. Eleanor held up the letter with trembling fingers. They summoned me. He stepped closer. Who? Eleanor hesitated, then spoke the name in a whisper. Sir Alistair Crowe. The prince's jaw tightened so sharply that Eleanor saw the muscle jump. So it is him, he said. You know him, Eleanor whispered. I know of him, the prince replied, voice low. He is the sort of man who turns households into instruments. Eleanor swallowed hard. Mrs. Pritchard gave me the letter. She said, They want to make me harmless or useful. The prince's gaze sharpened. What did she mean? She meant they want me to say what they wish, Eleanor said, and the fear in her voice cracked the words, or they will ruin me. The prince went still. Look at me, he said. Eleanor looked up, startled by the command. She obeyed. His eyes held hers. You must not be ruined because you spoke to a door. Eleanor let out a shaky breath. I did more than speak to a door. His expression tightened. Then I am the one who placed you in this position. Eleanor shook her head. No, they did. They chose to hunt you. You chose, he said softly. Eleanor's throat tightened. Yes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the prince asked, When is the summons? 9 o'clock, Eleanor whispered. He glanced toward the door as if he could measure time through the wood. And what do you believe he will demand? Eleanor's voice trembled. A statement, a signature, something I cannot take back. The prince's mouth hardened. He will try to use your hand to place ink where he cannot place it himself. Eleanor swallowed. What do I do? The prince exhaled slowly, forcing calm into his breath. You will go, he said. Eleanor stared. Your Highness, you will go, he repeated, firmer. Because refusing will make you a target immediately. Going gives you a chance to leave the room. Eleanor's fingers tightened. And what do I say? The least, he said. You saw nothing. You heard nothing. You know nothing. Eleanor's eyes widened. But then you will remain trapped. He held her gaze. If you confess everything to Sir Alistair, you will not save me. You will only hand him proof that you are involved. Eleanor's throat tightened. Captain Ashford told me to say as little as possible. The prince's eyes flicked with recognition. You reached him. I showed him the token, Eleanor whispered. He took it. The prince nodded once, but there was no relief in his expression. And did he promise help? Eleanor shook her head. He told me to survive. The prince's mouth tightened. Then he is either cautious or compromised. Eleanor's breath caught. Which? The prince's gaze sharpened. We will not know until we are forced to know. Eleanor looked down at her hands. I am so frightened, she admitted, and the honesty made her cheeks burn. The prince's voice softened. So am I. Eleanor looked up, startled. He did not look away. I have been taught not to say it, he added, but I will not lie to you. Eleanor's chest tightened. In that small room, the air looked less like a symbol and more like a man cornered by his own walls. A sound outside made Eleanor's body stiffen. Footsteps, not many. One person, perhaps. The prince moved instantly toward the door, listening. Eleanor held her breath. The footsteps passed. Only then did the prince turn back. We cannot keep you coming here, he said. They will notice the pattern. Eleanor nodded. I know. His gaze fell briefly to her hands, to the letter. After you see Sir Alistair, you must not return here immediately. Eleanor swallowed. But I must tell you, you must stay alive, he said. And there was steel beneath the softness now. That is how you will tell me anything. Eleanor forced herself to breathe. Yes, she whispered. The prince stepped closer. He did not touch her. Yet his presence filled the room, steady and controlled. If he offers you a choice, he said quietly, remember that his choice will not be real. He will offer two paths, both leading where he wants. Eleanor's throat tightened. Then what is real? The prince held her gaze. Your mind. Keep it. Do not let him make you panic. Eleanor nodded, swallowing hard. And Eleanor, he added. She looked up. If you must betray someone, he said, voice very low, betray me with words rather than betray yourself with despair. I can survive lies more easily than you can survive ruin. Eleanor's eyes stung. Do not ask that of me. I do not ask, he said. I prepare. Eleanor shook her head, her voice trembling. I will not sign anything that harms you. The prince's jaw tightened, but his eyes softened. You are stubborn, he murmured. I am Yorkshire, Eleanor whispered, and the faint defiance in the words steadied her. The prince's mouth twitched, almost a smile, almost. Then his expression sobered again. Go. Before someone marks the time, Eleanor slipped out, bolted the door behind her, and forced her feet to move at an ordinary pace. The corridor outside felt too bright. As she made her way toward the administrative offices, she passed servants who averted their eyes. She passed footmen who looked through her. She passed a young lady who barely glanced in her direction. No one saw the storm inside her. At 9, she stood before a door with a brass plate, administrative office. A man in a neat coat opened it. His face was blank. Miss Hughes, he said. Not asking, stating. Yes, Eleanor whispered. Come in. Eleanor stepped inside. The room was tidy and warm, meant to appear harmless. A desk, chairs, a lamp. Papers stacked like silent witnesses. Sir Alistair Crowe rose from behind the desk with measured grace. He was not old, not young. His hair was dark, his expression polite, his eyes sharp in a way that made Eleanor feel as though he had already read her thoughts. Miss Hughes, he said, and the sound of her name from his mouth made her skin prickle. Thank you for coming promptly. Eleanor dipped her head. Sir. Sit, he said, gesturing to a chair. Eleanor sat with her back straight, hands folded in her lap, eyes lowered at the correct angle. Sir Alistair returned to his seat and folded his hands on the desk. I will not keep you long, he said gently. I understand servants have duties. Eleanor's stomach tightened at the false courtesy. Yes, sir. He glanced at a paper, then back at her. You were in the East Corridor late last night, he said. Eleanor's pulse quickened. Yes, sir. You were seen, he added as if it were a casual detail. Eleanor's fingers tightened in her lap. I was cleaning, sir. Sir Alistair nodded slowly. So you have said. Eleanor kept her face blank. Sir Alistair continued, voice calm. There was concern last night, you may have heard that. I heard that the household was unsettled, Eleanor said carefully. Sir Alister's gaze remained steady. Unsettled. A good word. He reached for a document and slid it toward her. Eleanor's eyes fell on the top line, statement of observation. Her throat tightened. Sir Alister spoke softly. This is a simple matter, Miss Hughes. We aim to keep the household orderly. We aim to prevent rumour. Eleanor's voice came out thin. Yes, sir. He tapped the paper lightly. You will read it. Eleanor's hands trembled as she picked it up. The statement was written in careful language. It described a gentleman of high station behaving in an agitated manner in the corridor. It implied he had withdrawn due to distress and that his state was concerning. Eleanor's stomach turned. It did not name the prince. It did not have to. Her mouth went dry. Sir, this is not what I saw. Sir Alister's expression did not change. What did you see, Miss Hughes? Eleanor swallowed hard. I saw nothing unusual, only officers passing. Sir Alister nodded as though she had answered correctly, then said, And yet you were present, and the officers recall you. Eleanor's pulse hammered. He leaned back slightly, voice still polite. Do you know what happens when a servant becomes attached to a rumour? Eleanor's throat tightened. No, sir. Sir Alister's gaze sharpened by a fraction. She becomes unemployable. Eleanor clenched her hands. I have not spread rumour, sir. I did not say you had, Sir Alister replied gently. I said you were near one. Eleanor forced herself to breathe. Sir Alister slid another paper onto the desk, then another. He did not hand them to her. He simply let her see there were more. I have spoken to Mrs. Pritchard, he said. She values order. I value order. We are aligned. Eleanor's chest tightened. Mrs. Pritchard gave me your letter. Yes, Sir Alister said, because she understands the importance of cooperation. Eleanor's mouth went dry. Sir Alister pointed to the statement again. Sign, Miss Hughes. Eleanor's heart pounded so loudly she thought he must hear it. I cannot sign something untrue, she whispered. Sir Alister's gaze remained steady. Untrue according to what? Eleanor swallowed. According to my eyes. Sir Alister's lips curved slightly, not into warmth, but into patience. Miss Hughes, he said, your eyes are not on trial, your usefulness is. Eleanor felt cold spread through her limbs. Sir Alister continued, as if explaining a household rule to a child. If you do not sign, we have a difficulty. You become uncertain. Eleanor's voice shook. I am not uncertain, sir. Sir Alister nodded once. Then prove it by signing. Eleanor stared at the paper. Her mind raced. Say little, survive, appear uninvolved. But signing would make her involved forever. She lifted her eyes. Sir, why does my signature matter? Sir Alister's gaze flicked to her face, and for the first time Eleanor felt something like annoyance beneath his politeness. Because, he said smoothly, servants are believed when it is convenient to believe them. Eleanor's throat tightened. And because, he added, a servant's statement sounds like truth precisely because servants do not usually dare to invent. Eleanor swallowed. This will harm someone. Sir Alister's expression remained calm. This will protect the household. It will protect you, Eleanor whispered, before she could stop herself. Sir Alister's eyes sharpened and Eleanor immediately regretted it. He leaned forward slightly. Careful, Miss Hughes. Eleanor lowered her gaze. Forgive me, sir. Sir Alister's voice softened again. You are young. You are from the country. You may not understand the weight of what you have stumbled near. Eleanor's hands shook in her lap. I understand enough. Sir Alister watched her a moment. Then he changed tactics. You have family, he said conversationally. Eleanor's breath caught. Sir? A mother? He asked gently. A father? Siblings? Eleanor's chest tightened. Yes, sir. Sir Alister nodded as if pleased. Yorkshire folk. Simple. Proud. Eleanor's mouth went dry. Sir Alister continued, still calm. Do you send them money? Eleanor's fingers curled. Sometimes, sir. How good of you, Sir Alister said. Then you know what dismissal would mean. Not only for you. Eleanor's throat tightened until it hurt. She forced herself to speak. Sir Alister, if I sign, I will be a liar. Sir Alister tilted his head. If you do not sign, you will be unemployed. Eleanor stared at the statement, her vision blurring for a moment. Sir Alister placed a pen beside the paper, gently, like a gift. Here is the mercy. he said. You sign, you keep your place, and this matter becomes tidy. You do not sign, and I will be forced to conclude you are withholding information. Eleanor's voice shook. I am not withholding anything. Sir Alistair's gaze stayed on her. Then signing will cost you nothing. Eleanor's breath caught at the trap in the words. Across the room the lamp burned steadily. The quiet made every sound feel too loud. Eleanor glanced toward the door, fighting the urge to run. Sir Alistair followed her glance and smiled faintly. You will not leave until we settle this, he said, still polite. Eleanor's stomach dropped. A knock sounded on the door. Sir Alistair did not look away from Eleanor. Come. The door opened, and Mrs. Pritchard stepped in. Eleanor's heart lurched. Mrs. Pritchard's eyes flicked to Eleanor, then to Sir Alistair, then to the papers. Sir Alistair, Mrs. Pritchard said calmly. Mrs. Pritchard, Sir Alistair replied, as if welcoming a friend. We are nearly finished. Mrs. Pritchard's gaze settled on Eleanor. Are you cooperating, Eleanor? Eleanor's throat tightened. Ma'am, Mrs. Pritchard's voice remained calm. Answer. Eleanor's fingers trembled. I do not wish to sign something untrue. Mrs. Pritchard's expression did not change. Truth is not the point in matters of order. Eleanor's chest tightened. Sir Alistair leaned back, satisfied. You see, Miss Hughes, even Mrs. Pritchard understands. Eleanor looked at Mrs. Pritchard, desperate now. Ma'am, you told me silence is not safety. Mrs. Pritchard's gaze was cool. And you have not been silent, have you? Eleanor's stomach turned. Sir Alistair slid the paper closer. Sign, Miss Hughes, you may return to your duties. Eleanor's hands shook. She looked at the pen. She thought of the prince in the storeroom, waiting, trusting her with his life, while he had no reason to trust anyone. She thought of her mother's hands, worn from work, waiting for coins Eleanor sent when she could. Her breath came shallow. Sir Alistair's voice softened into something almost kind. This is not heroism, Miss Hughes. This is housekeeping. Sign. Eleanor lifted her trembling hand. Her fingers closed around the pen. The nib hovered over the line where her name should go. Sir Alistair leaned forward slightly and said very quietly, Now, Miss... Sign. Now, Miss... Sign. Eleanor's fingers tightened around the pen until they ached. The nib hovered above the line. Her breath came shallow. Then she set the pen down. Sir Alistair did not blink. You misunderstand. No, sir, Eleanor whispered. I understand perfectly. Mrs. Pritchard's voice was calm. Eleanor. Eleanor kept her eyes on the paper. Ma'am, I will not sign a thing that I cannot answer for before God. Sir Alistair's tone stayed courteous. This is not a chapel. It is still my name, Eleanor said, and surprised herself with how steady it sounded. And I am the one who will carry it after you have finished with me. Sir Alistair leaned back a fraction, studying her as one might study a lock that refuses a key. Mrs. Pritchard watched Eleanor without expression. Do you think refusing will help you? I think signing will destroy me, Eleanor replied softly. Sir Alistair tapped the paper once. You are over-dramatic. Eleanor lifted her eyes, only to the level of his collar. No, sir. I am practical. Sir Alistair's gaze sharpened. Practical servants keep their positions. Practical servants also keep their souls, Eleanor said. A silence fell. Sir Alistair's politeness thinned. Miss Hughes, you are not in command of this conversation. Eleanor's voice trembled, but she did not look away. Then I will ask permission. Sir Alistair's brow lifted. Permission for what? Eleanor swallowed. Permission to have a witness present before I sign anything. Mrs. Pritchard's head turned slightly, as if she had not expected that. Sir Alistair's eyes narrowed. A witness? Yes, sir, Eleanor said. If I am to make a statement about household security, then someone should observe that it was made without coercion. Mrs. Pritchard's voice cooled. Eleanor, do not be impertinent. Eleanor turned her head slightly toward Mrs. Pritchard. Ma'am, you taught me order. This is order. Sir Alistair's smile returned, faint and sharp. You have been reading above your station. I have been living below my worth, Eleanor said, and then immediately regretted it. Not the truth, but the daring of it. Sir Alistair rose. He moved around the desk with unhurried steps. He stopped behind Eleanor's chair, not touching it, only standing close enough for her to feel his presence like a shadow. Miss Hughes, he said softly. You speak as if you have someone protecting you. Eleanor's heart hammered. No one protects maids, sir. Sir Alistair leaned slightly toward her ear, his voice still polite. Then you will sign. Eleanor's hands clenched in her lap. Not without a witness. Mrs. Pritchard stepped forward. Sir Alistair, I will witness. Eleanor's stomach dropped. She kept her voice quiet. Ma'am, with respect, you are not neutral. Mrs. Pritchard's eyes flashed. Neutral. I am the head housekeeper. That is why, Eleanor said. Sir Alistair straightened. He looked at Mrs. Pritchard with measured amusement. You see, he said, she has become difficult. Mrs. Pritchard's voice tightened. Eleanor, you will ruin yourself. Eleanor's throat burned. Then let me at least ruin myself with the truth. Sir Alistair returned to his chair and sat as if the matter bored him. Very well, he said. We will have a witness. Eleanor's breath caught. She had expected refusal, anger, dismissal. Sir Alistair folded his hands. Bring Captain Ashford. Eleanor's blood went cold. She did not move, but her mind raced. Sir Alistair continued calmly. He is disciplined. He understands security. If he witnesses, you cannot claim later that you were pressed unfairly. Mrs. Pritchard's face remained unreadable, but Eleanor saw a flicker there. Worry or irritation. Sir Alistair rang a small bell. A clerk appeared at the door. Fetch Captain Ashford, Sir Alistair said. Immediately. The clerk bowed and left. Eleanor stared at the paper, trying to keep her breathing steady. Captain Ashford. If he was loyal to the prince, this could be a rescue. If he was not, it could be the net tightening. Sir Alistair watched her with patient satisfaction. Now we wait, Mrs. Pritchard stood stiffly by the desk, hands clasped. Eleanor, she said quietly, you should have obeyed. Eleanor did not look at her. I did obey, ma'am. I came. Mrs. Pritchard's voice sharpened. Obedience is not selective. Eleanor's mouth tightened. Neither is truth. Sir Alistair's gaze moved between them like someone watching a small performance. You know, he said lightly, the trouble with servants is not their place. It is their hope. Hope makes them imagine they can step beyond the line. Eleanor lifted her eyes. Hope is not trouble, sir. Sir Alistair smiled faintly. It is when it makes them forget consequences. The door opened again. Captain Ashford entered. He wore his uniform with the same controlled neatness Eleanor remembered. His gaze swept the room once, taking everything in. The papers, the pen, Eleanor's stiff posture, Mrs. Pritchard's set jaw, Sir Alistair's calm. Captain, Sir Alistair said warmly, as if this were a social call. Thank you for coming. Captain Ashford's voice was even. Sir Alistair, please, Sir Alistair said, gesturing to a spot near the desk. We require your presence as witness. Miss Hughes has been asked to sign a statement. She insists upon propriety. Captain Ashford looked at Eleanor just once. His gaze was sharp, but not unkind. Then he looked at the paper. May I read it? Sir Alistair nodded. Of course. Captain Ashford picked it up and read in silence. Eleanor watched his face, trying to see anything. He set the paper down carefully. This statement, Captain Ashford said, implies the witness observed a gentleman of high station in distress. Sir Alistair's tone stayed pleasant. It uses cautious language. Captain Ashford's gaze remained steady. It implies more than it says. Sir Alistair's smile tightened. That is how we maintain order. Captain Ashford turned slightly toward Eleanor. Miss Hughes, did you observe what is written here? Eleanor's throat tightened. This was it. Her voice came out thin but clear. No, Captain. Sir Alistair sighed, as if disappointed by a child. Miss Hughes is frightened. Captain Ashford's eyes did not leave Eleanor. Did you observe any gentleman in the corridor at all? Eleanor's heart hammered. Say little. Survive. She chose the smallest truth that did not condemn the prince. I observed officers, Eleanor said. They asked questions. Sir Alistair's tone turned gently scolding. And why would officers ask questions in the night if nothing occurred? Captain Ashford's voice stayed even. Officers ask questions for many reasons. Sir Alistair's eyes narrowed. Captain, you are not here to debate. You are here to witness. Captain Ashford nodded once. Then I will witness properly. Sir Alistair's smile disappeared. Meaning? Captain Ashford's gaze flicked to the statement. If you require Miss Hughes's signature, the statement should reflect what she will attest, not what you prefer she attest. Mrs. Pritchard's lips pressed together. Sir Alistair leaned back slowly. Captain, you overstep. Captain Ashford did not raise his voice. No, sir, I do my duty. Sir Alistair's eyes cooled. Your duty is to security. Yes, Captain Ashford replied, and security is weakened when false statements are forced. They become liabilities. Eleanor's breath caught. Captain Ashford was not compromised, not entirely. Sir Alistair looked at Eleanor again. Miss Hughes, sign and Captain Ashford will witness. Refuse, and your refusal will be noted. You will be dismissed by dawn. Eleanor's hands clenched. Captain Ashford spoke calmly. Sir Alistair, dismissals are the housekeeper's domain. Mrs. Pritchard's voice was sharp. And I will do it, Captain, if required. Eleanor felt the room tilt. Captain Ashford looked at Mrs. Pritchard. Ma'am, with respect, this is not a matter for threatening a maid into perjury. Mrs. Pritchard's face went pale with anger. Perjury? Captain, you forget yourself. Captain Ashford's voice remained level. I remember the law, ma'am. Sir Alistair's gaze sharpened. Law, a grand word. Captain Ashford turned his head slightly toward Sir Alistair. Shall I fetch the magistrate who oversees household disputes for the estate? Sir Alistair's smile returned, but it was thin. And cause a scandal over a servant's signature. Captain Ashford's eyes did not flinch. Scandal begins when truth is trapped. Eleanor's heart pounded. She could not believe what she was hearing. In that room, a captain was speaking to Sir Alistair as if Sir Alistair were merely a man. Sir Alistair stared for a moment, then tapped the paper again. Miss Hughes, he said softly. Last opportunity. Eleanor's throat tightened. She looked at Captain Ashford. Captain Ashford gave the smallest shake of his head. Almost nothing, but enough. Eleanor lifted her chin a fraction. I will not sign that statement, sir. Sir Alistair's eyes hardened. Then you will sign a different one. He reached into a folder and produced another paper. He slid it forward. Eleanor's stomach twisted. Captain Ashford leaned in and read. His jaw tightened. This is a confession. Sir Alistair's tone was still polite. It is an explanation. Miss Hughes will attest she heard mention of a gentleman's movements and failed to report it promptly. Eleanor's blood ran cold. It was not about the corridor anymore. It was about making her admit she knew something, anything, to tie her to their version. Captain Ashford set the paper down carefully. No, Sir Alistair's gaze sharpened. Captain, this is not your decision. Captain Ashford's voice stayed calm. It becomes my decision when it becomes coercion. Sir Alistair leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing. Are you challenging my authority? Captain Ashford met his gaze. I am refusing to witness a forced confession. Mrs. Pritchard's voice cut in. Captain Ashford, you will not dictate how this household is managed. Captain Ashford turned slightly toward her. Ma'am, I have served this house since His Highness's father held the title, and I will not be used to shame a maid into ruin to cover an administrative scheme. The room went quiet. Eleanor's breath shook in her chest. Sir Alistair stared at Captain Ashford, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. You speak boldly, Captain Ashford replied, because I am being asked to be dishonest. Sir Alistair's eyes flashed. Very well. If Miss Hughes will not sign, she will be dismissed. Mrs. Pritchard's lips tightened. I will see it done. Eleanor's stomach dropped, but her voice came out steadier than she expected. Dismiss me, then, she whispered. Mrs. Pritchard's eyes narrowed. Do not pretend this is noble. You will go hungry. Eleanor swallowed. I have been hungry before. Sir Alistair rose smoothly. Enough. Captain, you may go. Captain Ashford did not move. I will escort Miss Hughes out. Sir Alistair's voice cooled. You will do no such thing. Captain Ashford's gaze remained steady. Then I will remain, sir, because the moment she leaves alone, you may claim she agreed to something in the corridor. Sir Alistair's jaw tightened. Then, before Sir Alistair could speak again, another knock sounded. Sir Alistair's eyes flicked toward the door, irritated. Come. The clerk entered again, pale. Sir Alistair, there is a request. A request from whom? Sir Alistair snapped. The clerk swallowed. From His Highness. The room seemed to stop breathing. Eleanor's heart lurched so hard she nearly swayed. Sir Alistair went very still. "Explain." The clerk's voice trembled. "His Highness will receive the private secretary and household officers at once, in the small council room." Sir Alistair's face remained composed, but Eleanor saw the smallest crack, a shift at the corner of his mouth. Mrs. Pritchard's eyes widened. "That cannot be—" Captain Ashford's expression did not change, but his shoulders eased as if a weight had moved. Sir Alistair recovered first. "This is irregular. His Highness is unwell." The clerk swallowed. "He is present, sir." Eleanor's breath caught. He was seen. He had done it. Sir Alistair's gaze flicked to Eleanor, sharp and cold, as if trying to decide whether she had caused this. Captain Ashford spoke, calm and clear. "Miss Hughes will come with me." Sir Alistair's voice cut like a thin blade of paper. "No." Captain Ashford met his gaze. "Yes, if there is a council, there may be questions. And if there are questions about a servant's testimony, she should not be left alone with those who wish to shape it." Sir Alistair's jaw tightened. Mrs. Pritchard said, "This is absurd." Captain Ashford replied, "Then it will be corrected by daylight, ma'am. Until then, I will proceed as I see fit." Sir Alistair stared at him, then gave a tight nod, as if choosing not to argue in front of a clerk. "Go," Sir Alistair said. "Both of you. We will speak again." Eleanor rose on unsteady legs. Captain Ashford guided her out, without touching her, merely placing himself between her and Sir Alistair like a wall. They moved through corridors that felt suddenly too open. Eleanor whispered as they walked, "He is present." Captain Ashford's voice was low. "He is present." Eleanor's throat tightened. "How?" Captain Ashford's gaze stayed forward. "He has made a choice." They reached the small council room, not grand but important, a place where decisions were made quietly. Outside the door, Captain Ashford paused and turned to Eleanor. "Listen carefully," he said. "If you are asked questions, answer only what you know. Do not guess, do not embellish, the truth is strong enough." Eleanor's breath shook. "Captain, will they dismiss me anyway?" Captain Ashford held her gaze. "Not if His Highness speaks as I think he will." The door opened from within. A steward stepped out, startled to see Eleanor, but Captain Ashford did not hesitate. He nodded once and entered, Eleanor following. The room held several men with papers. Mrs. Pritchard came in behind them, stiff-faced. Sir Alistair entered last, composed again, as if he had never raised his voice, and there, near the far end of the table, stood Prince William Arthur of Ravenshire, not seated, standing. He wore a plain coat, not ceremonial, but his posture was unmistakable. He looked pale but steady. His gaze moved across the room and landed on Eleanor. For a fraction of a second, something softened in his eyes. Then he addressed the room, voice calm and clear. "Thank you for coming quickly," he said. Sir Alistair bowed slightly. "Your Highness, we were told you were indisposed." William's gaze remained level. "You were told, incorrectly." A murmur moved among the officers. Mrs. Pritchard stood rigid, hands clasped too tightly. William continued, "There are papers prepared for my signature that I have not requested. There are schedules prepared for my movement that I have not authorized. And there are statements being demanded of servants under threat of dismissal." Sir Alistair's expression did not change. "Your Highness, this is a misunderstanding." William's voice stayed calm. "Then it will be easily clarified." He gestured to a folder on the table. "Bring the relocation schedule." One officer hesitated. Sir Alistair's gaze sharpened. "Those are private administrative—" William's tone remained even, but it carried weight now. "Bring it." The officer swallowed and produced a folded sheet. William did not snatch it. He opened it carefully, then set it flat on the table. "This," he said, "was drafted without my knowledge." Sir Alistair's voice stayed smooth. "It was drafted for your comfort, Your Highness." William looked up. "My comfort does not require secrecy." Sir Alistair's smile was faint. "Your health required discretion." William's eyes held his. "My health did not require you to tell the household I could not be disturbed." Sir Alistair's jaw tightened slightly. "We aimed to protect you from strain." William's voice was calm, but it pressed forward. "No, You aimed to protect yourselves from my presence. The air in the room went tight. Mrs. Pritchard's voice broke in, controlled but strained. Your Highness, the household cannot function without order. William turned his gaze to her. And you threatened dismissal to enforce that order. Mrs. Pritchard's face tightened. I followed instruction. William's eyes sharpened. Whose instruction? Mrs. Pritchard's lips parted, then closed. Sir Alister spoke smoothly. Your Highness, surely you do not mean to accuse your own household? William raised a hand slightly. The room fell silent. Captain Ashford, William said. You were asked to witness a statement tonight. Captain Ashford stepped forward. Yes, Your Highness. William's gaze moved to Eleanor. And Miss Hughes was the servant asked to sign. Eleanor's breath caught. She kept her head lowered, but her voice carried. Yes, Your Highness. Sir Alister's eyes flicked to Eleanor, warning. William's voice remained calm. Miss Hughes, did you sign anything? Eleanor swallowed hard. No, Your Highness. William nodded once. Did you refuse because you wished to be troublesome? Eleanor's cheeks warmed with fear. No, Your Highness. I refused because it was untrue. A murmur rose again, quickly hushed. Sir Alister stepped forward slightly. Your Highness, with respect, servants do not understand the delicacy of such matters. William's gaze sharpened. Servants understand consequences better than most. They live in them. Sir Alister's smile thinned. This is unnecessary. William's tone stayed measured. Then it will end quickly. He reached into his pocket and placed something on the table. A folded note. Eleanor's breath caught. The note from behind the lamp bracket. He had retrieved it. Sir Alister's eyes flickered. William said, This was found where it should not have been. It bears a seal, not royal, but familiar. An officer leaned in, frowning at the wax. Sir Alister's voice stayed composed. A stray letter proves nothing. William looked at him. Then tell us whose seal it is. Sir Alister's eyes narrowed. I cannot be expected to identify every seal in England. William's voice did not rise. But you can identify the ones you use. Silence. Mrs. Pritchard's face went pale. Captain Ashford's gaze stayed fixed on Sir Alister. William continued. This note was dropped during a search conducted without proper authority, a search that included threatening a maid into signing a statement. Sir Alister's jaw tightened. Your Highness, you are being influenced. William's eyes flashed. I am being informed. Sir Alister leaned slightly forward. By a maid? William's voice turned colder, still controlled. By the truth. The officers shifted uneasily. William turned his gaze to the senior steward. You will remove Sir Alister from any duty that involves my papers or my movements. Sir Alister's face remained composed, but his eyes hardened. Your Highness, this is... William cut him off, calm as a closed door. You are finished. Sir Alister's hands curled slightly on the edge of the table. And if I refuse? William looked at Captain Ashford. Captain. Captain Ashford's voice was even. Sir Alister will comply. Sir Alister stared at Captain Ashford for a beat, then smoothed his expression. As you wish, he said to William, with a bow that felt like an insult dressed as courtesy. William did not acknowledge the bow. He turned his gaze to Mrs. Pritchard. Ma'am, you will keep your post, but you will answer to me directly on matters of household discipline, not to private secretaries. Mrs. Pritchard's lips parted. Your Highness. William's voice softened slightly, but not into weakness. You followed instruction because you feared disorder. I understand fear, but you will not threaten servants into lies again. Mrs. Pritchard's eyes flickered, and for the first time, Eleanor saw something human there. Shame, quickly contained. Yes, Your Highness, Mrs. Pritchard said. William looked around the table. The household will be told the truth inasmuch as it must be told, that I am well enough to attend my duties, that my movements are my own, that no servant is to be questioned without proper cause. The officers nodded, relieved to have a clear command. Sir Alister stood silent, his face a careful mask. William's gaze returned to Eleanor. Miss Hughes, he said. Eleanor's breath caught. Yes, Your Highness. You were threatened with dismissal, he said. Eleanor swallowed. Yes, Your Highness. William's voice stayed calm. You will not be dismissed for refusing to sign a false statement. Eleanor felt her knees go weak with relief she could barely contain. "Thank you, Your Highness." Sir Alistair spoke, smooth as ever. "Your Highness is generous. But servants should not be encouraged to—" William turned his head slightly. "Sir Alistair, you have been removed. You no longer advise me." Sir Alistair's jaw tightened. Captain Ashford stepped closer, not touching Sir Alistair, simply indicating the door with his presence. Sir Alistair gathered his papers with stiff precision and left without another word. The room exhaled. William addressed the remaining officers briefly, assigning duties, restoring order with clear instructions. Then he dismissed them one by one. Mrs. Pritchard lingered last. When only William, Eleanor, and Captain Ashford remained, Mrs. Pritchard spoke quietly. "Your Highness," she said, voice tight, "I did what I thought necessary." William's gaze was steady. "You did what you were told." Mrs. Pritchard's face tightened. "I feared the household would fall into scandal." William replied, "The household will fall into scandal only if it continues to fear truth." Mrs. Pritchard's lips pressed together. Then she bowed. "Miss Hughes," she said, not looking at Eleanor, "return to your duties tomorrow." Eleanor's voice trembled. "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Pritchard left. Captain Ashford remained, watchful. William turned to him. "Captain, thank you." Captain Ashford bowed. "Your Highness." William's gaze sharpened. "You took a token from Miss Hughes." Captain Ashford's expression did not change. "Yes, Your Highness." William nodded once. "You did right." Captain Ashford hesitated, then said, "Sir Alistair has allies." William's voice stayed calm. "I am aware." Captain Ashford's gaze flicked to Eleanor, then back. "Miss Hughes should not be left exposed." William's eyes softened slightly. "Agreed." Captain Ashford bowed again. "I will arrange discreet watch over the servants' corridor near her quarters. No fuss, no alarm." William nodded. "Do so." Captain Ashford left. The room went quiet. Eleanor stood near the door, hands clasped so tightly her fingers hurt. She did not know whether to speak or remain silent. William broke the silence first. "Eleanor," he said, and the sound of her name in that room felt different than in the closet. Not desperate, not hidden. "Yes, Your Highness," she whispered. He walked toward her, unhurried. He stopped at a respectful distance. "You saved my life," he said simply. Eleanor's throat tightened. I only kept you from being found." He shook his head slightly. "You did more than that. You refused to be used." Eleanor swallowed. "I was frightened. So was I," he said. "And you were braver." Eleanor looked down quickly. "Your Highness, I am not brave. I am stubborn and frightened and honest," William added. Eleanor's breath shook. William's voice softened. "When Sir Alistair spoke of your family, he meant to break you." Eleanor nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "Yes." William's jaw tightened. "That will not happen again." Eleanor lifted her eyes, startled. He continued, carefully choosing each word. "You are not a tool, not a rumor, not a convenient name at the bottom of a page." Eleanor's eyes stung. "In this palace I have been all those things." William's gaze held hers. "Then I will change what I can." Eleanor let out a shaky breath. "You cannot change the world, Your Highness." "No," he said quietly, "but I can change my world." Eleanor's heart pounded. William's voice dropped, gentle but firm. "Eleanor Hughes, will you allow me to do something that will protect you?" Eleanor's breath caught. "Protect me." He nodded once. "Yes." Eleanor's mind flashed to rules, to whispers, to the way maids were discussed as if they had no ears. She whispered, "If you are kind to me openly, they will punish me for it." William's expression tightened. "Then, I will be more than kind." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Your Highness," he took a slow breath, as if steadying himself. "I have been surrounded by people who bow," he said, "and I have never been more alone than I was last night in that closet." Eleanor's lips parted, but no sound came. William continued, voice low, "You did not bow, you did not flatter, you did not demand reward, you simply stayed." Eleanor's chest hurt. He looked at her, as if the words mattered enough to cost him pride. "I want you beside me," he said, "not as a servant, as my wife." Eleanor went utterly still. The silence stretched, Then her voice came out, small and shaken. "Your Highness, that is not possible." "It is possible," William said. "It will be difficult. It will invite whispers, but it is possible." Eleanor's hands trembled. "They will say I ensnared you." William's eyes sharpened. "They will say whatever keeps their world comfortable." Eleanor's throat tightened. "And your family?" William's voice stayed steady. "My family has already tried to decide my life without me." Eleanor swallowed. "You barely know me." William's gaze softened. "I know what you did when you had nothing to gain." Eleanor's eyes stung. "I have everything to lose, and I would not ask if I did not mean to carry the weight with you," he said. Eleanor's breath shook. "I am a maid from Yorkshire," William replied, "and I am a man who owes his life to a maid from Yorkshire." Eleanor's hands pressed tighter together. "If you marry me, I will be watched every day." William nodded. "Yes." "I will be judged," Eleanor whispered. "Yes." "I will be blamed for your choices," she said. "Yes," William answered again, and his voice did not soften from it. "But you will not face it alone." Eleanor's breath caught. "You speak as if love is stronger than rank." William's gaze held hers. "Sometimes it must be, or we become nothing but rank." Eleanor's tears threatened, and she hated them. "I do not want pity," she whispered fiercely. William's expression tightened, almost pained. "It is not pity." Eleanor lifted her chin, forcing steadiness. "Then why?" William's voice was quiet, absolute. "Because when you whispered through that door, you gave me something I have not been given in years. Trust without bargaining." Eleanor's breath shook. William added softer. "And because I find that I do not wish to walk these corridors without hearing your steps near mine." Eleanor stared at him, her heart a storm. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to say no. She wanted to run. She wanted to be brave and disappear. At last she whispered, "If I accept, you must promise me one thing." William's eyes did not waver. "Name it." Eleanor's voice trembled, but it was clear. "Do not make me into a symbol. Do not use me to prove you are noble. Let me be simply Eleanor." William's gaze softened. "I swear it." Eleanor swallowed hard. "And you must allow me to care for my mother, for my family." William nodded at once. "They will be cared for." Eleanor's breath caught. She looked down at her hands, then up again. "I do not know how to be a princess," she whispered. William's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Then do not be one tonight." Eleanor's eyes stung. He lifted his hand slowly, giving her time to refuse. His fingers did not touch her face. He only reached for her hand gently, as if asking permission in the smallest gesture. Eleanor hesitated, then placed her hand in his. His grip was warm and steady. "Eleanor Hughes," he said quietly, "will you marry me?" Eleanor's throat tightened until she could barely breathe. Then she whispered, "Yes." Eleanor's yes hung in the air like a bell that could not be unrung. For a moment, William did not move. He simply stood there holding her hand as though the whole palace might try to snatch her away the instant he loosened his fingers. Then he bowed his head slightly, not as a prince to a maid, but as a man who had been given a truth he did not deserve. "Thank you," he said. Eleanor's throat tightened. "Do not thank me yet, Your Highness. Tomorrow will come with teeth. Then we will meet it with steadiness," he replied. She tried to breathe. "And with rules." He nodded once. "With rules, yes. I will not pretend they do not exist." Eleanor's voice came out thin. "They will ask how it happened." William's gaze did not waver. "I will tell them." Eleanor blinked. "Tell them what?" "The truth," he said. "That you acted with courage, that I acted with gratitude, that I asked you plainly and you answered plainly." Eleanor's fingers trembled in his. "They will not like plainness. I am less concerned with what they like," William said quietly, "than with what is right." Eleanor felt her knees weaken. She steadied herself by tightening her hand around his. "You said you would protect me," she whispered. "I will," he replied. "And you will not hide me," Eleanor added quickly, as if afraid the palace would turn her into a secret again. William's eyes softened. "No, I will not hide you." A soft knock came at the door. Eleanor flinched. William turned his head. "Come." Captain Ashford entered, careful and discreet. He glanced at Eleanor's face, then at their joined hands, and his expression shifted, not into surprise exactly, but into recognition that something irreversible had happened. "To your Highness," Captain Ashford said, bowing. "Captain," William replied, "we are leaving this room." Captain Ashford's gaze sharpened. "Now?" "Yes," William said, quietly, and then not quietly. Eleanor's breath caught at the meaning of it. Captain Ashford gave a single nod. "I will have the corridor cleared." William looked at Eleanor. "You will return to your quarters for the night. I will not have you wandering halls alone." Eleanor's stomach tightened. "And you?" "I will sleep in my own rooms," William said, "with my door unbarred. Let them try to explain why they would bar it." Eleanor could not help it. A small, shaky laugh escaped her. William's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "There, you are still yourself." Eleanor's eyes stung. "I am trying to be." William lifted her hand slightly and released it, only to place his palm over it, briefly, as if sealing a promise without speaking more. "Captain will see you safely," he said. "Tomorrow morning you will not be summoned like a culprit. You will be requested like a person," Eleanor swallowed. "And if Mrs. Pritchard—" "She will comply," William said, and his voice made the word sound like inevitability. Captain Ashford stepped aside. "Miss Hughes," Eleanor hesitated at the door. She looked back at William once more. "You will truly do this," she whispered. "You will truly—" "Marry you," William finished, calm and absolute. "Yes," Eleanor nodded, because if she spoke again she feared her voice would break. She left with Captain Ashford. In the corridor, Captain Ashford kept his tone low. "You will not look down while you walk." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Captain, you will not look down," he repeated. "Not tomorrow, not afterward. You may be humble, you may be polite, but you will not shrink. Those who wish to harm you thrive on shrinking." Eleanor swallowed. "I have survived by shrinking." Captain Ashford's gaze stayed forward. "You have survived. Now you must live." Eleanor's breath shook. "They will whisper." "They already whisper," Captain Ashford said. "Whispers are always there. The question is whether you bend to them." Eleanor reached her quarters without being stopped, yet she felt the palace watching the way a room watches a match brought too near dry paper. Inside her small chamber, she pressed her hand to her chest, trying to steady her heart. It was done. She had said yes. Sleep did not come easily. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard Sir Alister's voice at her ear. "Now, Miss, sign." She rose before dawn, washed her face, and dressed in her plainest gown. She braided her hair with hands that trembled. When she opened her door, a young maid was waiting, eyes wide. "Eleanor," the girl whispered. "Mrs. Pritchard wants you." Eleanor's stomach tightened. "When?" "Now," the girl said, then added quickly, "She sent me. She said you are to come properly, not like you're being scolded." Eleanor blinked. That alone was strange. She walked through the servants' corridor with her back straight, remembering Captain Ashford's command. "Do not look down." At Mrs. Pritchard's office she knocked. "Come," Mrs. Pritchard called. Eleanor entered. Mrs. Pritchard stood behind her desk, hands clasped, posture rigid. The woman looked as though she had slept poorly, though she would never confess it. Eleanor kept her voice steady. "Ma'am." Mrs. Pritchard's gaze met hers, sharp and searching. "I have been informed," Mrs. Pritchard said, "that you will no longer be assigned to ordinary duties." Eleanor's stomach clenched. Mrs. Pritchard continued immediately, as if unwilling to let Eleanor drown in fear. "Because His Highness has requested you for a separate arrangement." Eleanor breathed carefully. "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Pritchard's lips tightened. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Eleanor lifted her chin a fraction. "Only that I did not seek this." Mrs. Pritchard studied her for a long moment. Then she said, quieter, "I believe you." Eleanor blinked. Mrs. Pritchard's jaw tightened. "Do not make me regret it." Eleanor swallowed. "No, ma'am." Mrs. Pritchard reached for a paper, then another. "His Highness has ordered a legal clerk to prepare documents. Not for show. For protection." Eleanor's breath caught. "Protection?" Mrs. Pritchard's voice remained stiff. "A settlement, a guarantee of support for your family, a formal position for you until the marriage takes place, so no one may call you improper." Eleanor's cheeks warmed with shame and relief tangled together. "I do not want to be purchased." Mrs. Pritchard's eyes narrowed. "It is not purchase. It is how the world is made to stop snapping at your heels." Eleanor nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Pritchard hesitated, then said as if the words cost her, "You did a difficult thing." Eleanor's throat tightened. "So did you." Mrs. Pritchard's eyes flashed. "Do not pity me. I will keep this household running." "I did not pity you," Eleanor said softly. "I only meant you chose truth when it would have been easier to choose fear." Mrs. Pritchard looked away. "Go," she said briskly. "You will be expected in the small sitting room near the library within the hour. And Eleanor—" Eleanor paused at the door. Mrs. Pritchard's voice lowered. "Do not allow them to make you unkind. That is how palaces win." Eleanor's eyes stung. "I will try, ma'am." Mrs. Pritchard nodded once, sharply, as if ending the conversation before it became too human. Eleanor left. The sitting room near the library was not grand, but it was quiet and respectable. Captain Ashford stood outside it, like a calm warning to anyone who might approach with mischief. When Eleanor arrived, Captain Ashford nodded. "He is inside." Eleanor's heart pounded. "Is anyone else inside?" "The clerk," Captain Ashford said, "and a lady you will meet." Eleanor frowned. "A lady?" Captain Ashford's gaze sharpened. "His Highness insisted." Eleanor took a breath and entered. William stood near the window, hands behind his back. He turned at once when she came in, and Eleanor felt the room tilt again, not from fear this time, but from the strange ache of being seen. A clerk sat at a small writing table, papers arranged neatly, and beside the clerk stood an older woman with grey hair pinned neatly, posture straight, eyes calm. She looked neither cruel nor overly kind, simply solid. William stepped toward Eleanor. "Good morning." Eleanor lowered her head slightly. "Good morning, Your Highness." "Not here," William said gently. "Not in this room." Eleanor's breath caught. Then, William. The name felt dangerous and wonderful on her tongue. The older woman watched them with clear eyes. William gestured. "This is Lady Merryweather. She served my mother as companion and adviser. I asked her to be present because she will not flatter me, and she will not dismiss you." Lady Merryweather inclined her head. "Miss Hughes." Eleanor curtsied, careful. "My lady." Lady Merryweather's gaze swept Eleanor's face, as if assessing her strength rather than her dress. "You look tired," Lady Merryweather said. Eleanor nearly laughed. "Yes, my lady." Lady Merryweather nodded, approving of the honest answer. "Good. A tired woman who still stands straight is more trustworthy than a fresh woman who performs." Eleanor's cheeks warmed. William glanced at the clerk. "Proceed." The clerk cleared his throat. "Your Highness, Miss Hughes, these documents outline a formal engagement arrangement, a financial settlement, and provisions for Miss Hughes's mother and immediate family." Eleanor's stomach tightened. "My family?" William's gaze softened. "Your mother will not suffer because you refuse to sign a lie." Eleanor swallowed hard. "She will be frightened by attention." "Then she will have Lady Merryweather to explain matters gently," William said. Lady Merryweather nodded once. "I have handled frightened mothers before." Eleanor's eyes stung. "Thank you, my lady." Lady Merryweather's expression softened by a fraction. "Do not thank me yet. We must endure a room full of people who believe they own the world." The clerk slid the papers closer. "Miss Hughes, you will sign here and here." Eleanor's fingers trembled as she took the pen. William spoke quietly, close enough that only she could hear. "This time you sign truth." Eleanor's throat tightened. "It feels strange." "It will feel less strange when you are safe," he replied. Eleanor signed. The clerk blotted the ink. "Very good." Lady Merryweather looked at Eleanor. "Now, before the palace begins its theatre, tell me plainly, do you accept this marriage freely?" Eleanor held her gaze. "Yes, my lady." Lady Merryweather turned to William. "And you?" William did not hesitate. "Freely." Lady Merryweather nodded. "Then we will be practical. We will announce it properly, with witnesses. We will not allow it to float as rumor." Eleanor's heart pounded. "Today?" William's voice was calm. "Today," Lady Merryweather said. "There will be objections." William replied, Let them object. I will answer. Eleanor's stomach tightened. They will ask why a prince would choose me. William looked at her as if the answer was simple. Because you chose truth when it cost you. Lady Merryweather's gaze sharpened. He will say that, and they will pretend to be moved, and then they will try to wound you in quieter ways. Eleanor swallowed. What ways? Lady Merryweather's tone remained even. They will test your manners. They will invite you, then ignore you. They will smile while offering small humiliations. Eleanor's chest tightened. I know those smiles. William's jaw tightened. Then we will not attend any gathering that requires you to accept humiliation. Lady Merryweather raised a brow. You cannot avoid every room. William met her gaze. No, but I can change how rooms behave. Lady Merryweather considered him for a moment, then nodded. Good. That is what a man must do if he insists on making an uncommon choice. Eleanor's heart pounded harder. Uncommon choice, as if she were a strange fabric brought into a respectable house. William turned slightly toward the door. Captain Ashford. Captain Ashford entered at once. Captain, William said, summon the senior steward, Mrs. Pritchard, and any household officers necessary. In the small reception hall, not the grand one. I want fewer echoes. Captain Ashford bowed. At once, Your Highness. He left. Eleanor's breath shook. You are truly doing it. William glanced at her. Do you wish me not to? Eleanor's throat tightened. No. William stepped closer, his voice lowering. Then breathe. Eleanor tried. Lady Merryweather watched them, then said briskly, You may hold her hand in public, Your Highness. It will quiet the cruder minds. Eleanor blinked, startled. William's mouth twitched. Will it? It will remind them she is not a rumour, Lady Merryweather replied. She is chosen. Eleanor's cheeks warmed. William held out his hand to Eleanor, slow and respectful. Eleanor placed her hand in his. Lady Merryweather nodded once, satisfied. There. Now you both look less like frightened children. Eleanor's breath caught on a laugh that turned into a shaky exhale. William's thumb pressed gently against Eleanor's knuckles, a quiet steadiness. They walked together into the corridor. As they moved through the palace, Eleanor felt eyes. She heard whispers that stopped when William passed. She caught fragments. A maid? Surely not. After last night, Eleanor's stomach tightened, but William's hand did not loosen. In the small reception hall, the senior steward stood with two officers. Mrs. Pritchard stood stiffly beside them. Captain Ashford waited near the door. When William entered, everyone bowed. Eleanor started to curtsy, but William's hand steadied hers. Good morning, William said, calm. The senior steward looked anxious. Your Highness, we are honoured. William nodded once, then went directly to the point. I will speak plainly, he said. I am well, I am present, and there has been an attempt to conduct my affairs without my consent. The officers shifted uncomfortably. William continued, That attempt has ended. Sir Alistair Crowe has been dismissed from my immediate service and will be sent away from this estate within the day. Mrs. Pritchard's lips tightened, but she said nothing. A murmur moved among the men. William raised a hand slightly. Silence returned. Further, William said, I am announcing my engagement. The senior steward's eyes widened. One officer's mouth parted, then shut again. William turned his head slightly toward Eleanor. To Miss Eleanor Hughes. The room seemed to stop breathing. Eleanor's heart pounded so hard she could barely hear. A long, thick silence. Then the senior steward forced his voice to work. Your Highness, Miss Hughes she is a valued servant. William's gaze sharpened. She is a valued person. The officer nearest the wall cleared his throat. Forgive me, Your Highness, but... William's tone stayed controlled. Speak. The man swallowed. This is unusual. William nodded. Yes. The man hesitated, then tried again. It will invite talk. William's voice was calm. Let it. Mrs. Pritchard's eyes flicked toward Eleanor, then away. Lady Merryweather stepped forward from the side door. Eleanor had not noticed her enter, but now she stood with the ease of someone who knew exactly where to place herself. Gentlemen, Lady Merryweather said, you have heard His Highness. Your role is to assist, not to tremble. The senior steward swallowed. Of course, Lady Merryweather. William continued. Miss Hughes will be treated with respect from this moment forward. Any servant or officer who insults her will be removed. One officer shifted. Your Highness, servants will obey. William's gaze sharpened. Not merely obey. Understand? Captain Ashford spoke for the first time, calm and firm. They will understand, Your Highness. William nodded once. The senior steward bowed. Then we will prepare the household. William's voice remained measured. Prepare them without cruelty. No whispers in servants' halls. No tests. No foolish games. The officer nodded quickly. Yes, Your Highness. William turned his head slightly toward Mrs. Pritchard. Ma'am. Mrs. Pritchard's posture stiffened. Your Highness, you will oversee the transition, William said. With Lady Merryweather's assistance. Mrs. Pritchard's lips tightened. Yes, Your Highness. William looked back at the room. That is all. The men bowed and began to retreat as if leaving a room where the air had changed. As they left, Eleanor finally breathed. Her hand still in William's, she whispered. They looked at me as if I were a mistake. William's voice was low. They looked at you as if you were proof the world can shift. Eleanor's throat tightened. I do not want to be proof. I want to be safe. William stopped in the corridor just out of the hall and turned to face her. You will be, he said. Not because they approve, because I will not allow them to hurt you. Eleanor's eyes stung. They hurt people with words. William nodded. Then I will answer with deeds. Lady Merryweather joined them, her voice brisk. You will both eat, Eleanor blinked. My lady, you will eat, Lady Merryweather repeated. Bravery without bread becomes foolishness. William's mouth twitched. She is correct. Eleanor managed a small, shaky smile. Yes, they went to a quiet breakfast room. Not grand. Lady Merryweather sat at the far end like a watchful aunt. William sat beside Eleanor, not across from her. A young footman brought tea, hands trembling. William addressed him kindly. Set it down, thank you. The footman blinked as if kindness from a prince were more frightening than sternness. Yes, Your Highness. When the door closed, Eleanor whispered. He looked as though he expected punishment for breathing. William's gaze darkened. This is what power does when used without care. Lady Merryweather cut in. And this is why you will use it with care now that you have decided to marry for love. Eleanor's cheeks warmed. Love. William looked at Eleanor, and the word became something heavier, softer. Yes, he said quietly. Love. Eleanor's breath caught. I have never been allowed to think of it. William's voice lowered. Think of it now. Lady Merryweather made a small sound. If you two continue staring, your tea will go cold. Eleanor startled, embarrassed. William's mouth curved into a real smile, brief and restrained but unmistakable. Forgive us, he said to Lady Merryweather. I forgive you, Lady Merryweather replied. I do not forgive foolishness. So, we will proceed to the next necessity. Eleanor's stomach tightened. What necessity? Lady Merryweather said. A visit to your mother. Eleanor nearly dropped her cup. My mother. William's gaze softened. Today, a carriage will be prepared. Not a grand procession. Just enough to ensure you are treated properly when you arrive. Eleanor's throat tightened. She will think something terrible has happened. Then we will tell her something wonderful has happened, William replied. Eleanor's hands trembled. She will not believe it. William's voice was quiet. She will believe you. Eleanor swallowed hard, then whispered, I want to go. Lady Merryweather nodded once. Good. Afterward, we will choose a wedding date that gives you time to breathe and gives the household time to adjust. Eleanor's voice came out small. Will they ever adjust? Lady Merryweather's expression turned dry. No. They will simply learn to behave. Captain Ashford appeared at the door, discreet. Your Highness, the carriage is prepared. And Sir Alistair Crowe requests a word. Eleanor's heart lurched. William's expression hardened. No, Captain Ashford nodded. As you wish. Eleanor whispered, Will he cause trouble? William's voice stayed calm. He will cause whispers, but he no longer holds the keys. Eleanor's stomach tightened at the word keys. William glanced at her. Do you still have the closet key? Eleanor blinked. The one from the corridor. William nodded. Eleanor swallowed. I kept it. I do not know why. It was in my apron pocket when everything began. William held out his hand. Eleanor placed the small key in his palm. He looked at it for a moment. then closed his fingers around it. "Do you know what this is?" he asked quietly. Eleanor's throat tightened. "A reminder." William nodded. "Yes, a reminder of a door that tried to make me vanish." He opened his hand again and placed the key back into Eleanor's palm. "But it is also this," he added, "a reminder that you opened the door." Eleanor's eyes stung. "I was terrified, and you still opened it," he said. Eleanor closed her fingers around the key, holding it as if it could steady her. They travelled to Yorkshire with quiet escort. Lady Merriweather spoke of practical matters, as if practicality could keep the world from cutting too close. William spoke little, but when he did, it was always to Eleanor, always to keep her anchored. When they arrived at Eleanor's mother's cottage, Eleanor's legs trembled. Her mother opened the door, flour on her hands, eyes widening at the sight of the carriage, at the fine coat of the driver, at the calm lady stepping down first. Then her mother's gaze fell on Eleanor. "Ellie?" her mother whispered. What has happened?" Eleanor stepped forward quickly. "Mama, nothing terrible, I promise." Her mother's eyes flicked to William, who stood back a respectful step, as if he knew this moment belonged to Eleanor first. Her mother's voice shook. "Who is that gentleman?" Eleanor's breath trembled in her chest. She took her mother's hands. "This is Prince William," Eleanor said softly, "and he has asked me to marry him." Her mother's mouth parted. No sound came. Lady Merriweather said gently, "Mrs. Hughes, you may sit. The news will not bite." Her mother blinked as if she could not understand the words. "Marry? Ellie, do not jest." Eleanor's eyes stung. "I would never jest with you." William stepped forward then, his posture calm, his voice respectful. "Mrs. Hughes," he said, "I know this sounds impossible, but it is true. Your daughter showed me courage when no one else would. I have asked her to be my wife, and she has consented." Eleanor's mother stared at him, then at Eleanor, then back again. "Why my Ellie?" her mother whispered, and the question held both love and fear. William's gaze softened. "Because she is honest, because she is steady, because she is herself even when threatened." Eleanor's mother's eyes filled. "They will be cruel to you." Eleanor swallowed. "They will try." William's voice was quiet and firm. "They will fail." Her mother looked at Eleanor as if seeing her anew, then pulled her into a tight embrace. "Oh, Ellie," she whispered, "my brave girl." Eleanor clung to her mother, shaking. When she pulled back, she wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed. Her mother looked at William, still stunned. "Will she be safe?" William answered without hesitation. "Yes," Lady Merriweather added, "and she will not be made to forget where she came from. That is my role." Eleanor's mother let out a shaky laugh through tears. "Then I suppose I must learn to curtsy." Lady Merriweather smiled, small and real. "We will teach you only what you wish to learn." Eleanor's chest ached with the warmth of it. Weeks passed in a rush of necessary things. Papers, announcements, quiet visits. Lessons that were less about becoming someone else and more about keeping Eleanor from being cornered by rules she had never been allowed to touch. There were whispers. Of course there were. A lady at tea said too sweetly, "Miss Hughes, how remarkable that you caught His Highness's attention." Eleanor's hands trembled, but she kept her voice calm. "I did not catch it, ma'am. He gave it." The lady blinked, uncertain how to respond to a servant who had become something else. A courtier murmured to William, "It will be difficult." William replied, "Then we will be patient with difficulty. We will not be patient with cruelty." Mrs. Pritchard, when she passed Eleanor in a corridor, stopped once and said stiffly, "Your posture is improved." Eleanor nodded politely, "Thank you, ma'am." Mrs. Pritchard hesitated, then added quieter, "Do not lose your sense." "I will keep it," Eleanor said. And on the day of the wedding, the palace did what it always did. It tried to make the moment about appearances. William refused. He chose a smaller ceremony, attended by those who had earned their place there through loyalty rather than title. Lady Merriweather stood as witness. Captain Ashford stood near the door, calm and steady. Mrs. Pritchard stood at the back, rigid but present. Eleanor walked forward with her head high, not because she had forgotten she once carried linens, but because she had decided she would not carry shame again. William waited for her, eyes steady, hands slightly trembling, as if he were the one in danger now. When Eleanor reached him, he whispered, Are you frightened? Eleanor's voice shook, but she smiled. Yes. William nodded. So am I. Eleanor took a breath. Then we will be frightened together. William's gaze softened. Yes. The vows were simple, spoken clearly, as if truth itself were the finest ornament. When William placed the ring on Eleanor's hand, his fingers lingered a heartbeat longer than necessary, careful and reverent. When Eleanor placed the ring on his, her hands were steady. Afterward, when the formal words were done and the room had exhaled, William turned to Eleanor and spoke softly, only for her. The door is open now, he said. Eleanor's breath caught. What door? William glanced at her hand, where she still held a small key on a ribbon tucked beneath her glove, a private symbol Lady Merriweather had allowed. The one you refused to close, he said. Eleanor swallowed, eyes stinging. I thought it would ruin me. William's gaze held hers. It freed you. Eleanor looked around. The palace was still a palace. The rules still existed. The whispers still tried to curl at the edges. But William's hand was steady in hers, and her mother sat nearby with wet eyes and a proud, trembling smile. And Captain Ashford watched the room with quiet satisfaction, and Lady Merriweather looked as if she had won an argument with the world. Eleanor leaned closer and whispered, What do we do now? William's voice was warm, low, and certain. We live honestly. We protect those beneath us. We do not allow fear to decide our days. Eleanor's breath shook. And if they whisper again? William's mouth curved gently. Then we will answer with kindness and firmness, because love does not need permission to be real. Eleanor looked up at him, and for the first time she felt the palace shrink, not her. She whispered, I am still Eleanor. William kissed her knuckles, restrained and tender, and replied, And you are my Eleanor. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.